Welcome to Fanfiction Audiobooks. Marvel's Planeswalkers. Chapter 1. 2 years ago. Marvel Universe, New York, Chinatown. On the roof of a slightly old 5-story house along the street, an Asian young man about 20 years old was wearing white short-sleeved upper body, blue and white jeans, dragging flip-flops, standing on sale from the supermarket. In front of the barbecue grill I bought. The young man held a cigarette in the corner of his mouth, and flipped the T-bone steak on the grill from time to time with his right hand. However, one side of the steak was burnt but still bloodshot, telling us that the young man's attention was not on the steak. The young man stared blankly at his left hand holding a bottle of beer. Of course, what the young man was looking at was not the cheap beer, but the one on the index and middle fingers of his left hand, which was connected by a long piece of brass-colored metal. Ring of weirdness. Although the ring was strange, the young man knew that this brass-colored ring had a famous name in the world, the hanging ring. After a long time, a smell of burnt meat made the young man turn his attention back to the steak. The young man curled his lips and put down the fork for flipping the steak. Why eat if it's burnt? Carrying a beer, the young man squatted in the corner, touching his belly with a trace of bitterness on his lips. 2 years since he came to this world, his soul has finally been perfectly integrated with his body, even if he is caught by the people from the Master Temple. Well, I'm afraid I can't see any clues about the spirit body. Thinking back to 2 years ago, when the young man first came to this world, he looked confused. He was neither struck by lightning nor fell into the sewer. He just took a nap. When he thought he was getting up to wash up and go to work at dawn, he found that he was lying on the bed. On the hospital bed, there was a black nurse next to me who was busy changing the dressing for the patient next to her. The young man thought something was wrong with his body and didn't think much about it. He subconsciously thought that a black nurse came to the hospital and that was it. The young man said feebly, "Then take it." As soon as he finished speaking, the young man immediately realized that something was wrong with him. Having spoken Mandarin all his life, how could he suddenly change the normal tone of "where is this" into the funny feeling of a foreigner learning to speak Chinese with his tongue stiffened? When the black nurse heard what the young man said, she subconsciously turned to look at the young man and shouted, "Oh, buy it." Then she spoke a string of English that the young man did not understand. The young man was stunned for a moment. "Sister Black Nurse, except for the first sentence, I understand it. What did you say next? Don't you know that my English test score did not exceed 20 points? Also, since you have gone abroad to work, can you stop speaking your own mother tongue and speak Chinese if you can?" Looking at the nurse who had been speaking English, the young man felt a secret desire in his heart. He wanted to teach the black nurse tongue twisters, such as red carp, green carp, and donkey, in return for the hard work he had to learn 29 letters. The great hatred of the table. Something doesn't seem right. There are only 25 letters. It doesn't seem right either. With his confused little eyes open, the young man was confused. How many English letters are there in the alphabet? The young man finally gave up thinking and muttered in a weird colloquial voice, "Whatever, I have already returned these contents to the physical education teacher." Seeing the young man's stunned expression and unclear speech, the nurse stopped what she was doing in a panic, turned around and ran out of the ward to find a doctor. She felt that the young man who was sent from the scene of the car accident could still be rescued, at least she didn't think that the young man had died. After regaining consciousness, "Didn't you see that the other party hadn't even recovered the ability to speak?" Seeing the black nurse rushing out of the door, the young man subconsciously wanted to reach out his right hand to touch his dizzy forehead, but found that although his brain issued instructions, his right hand took 2 seconds to touch his forehead. Under what circumstances can the body still experience delays or network lags? Or is this a disease I have? Could it be that my procrastination has evolved into procrastination? By the way, is there any cure for this disease? As long as the treatment is good, I swear to the hospital light that I will never delay doing anything in the future. The confused young man was still immersed in regret. The ward door was pushed open again, and a white man wearing a doctor's white coat walked quickly to the young man's side. He opened the young man's eyelids with one hand and raised the small hand in his hand. The flashlight shone randomly into the young man's eyeballs. The young man whose eyes were dazzled wanted to push the white man's hand away, but unfortunately it took 2 seconds before his hand slowly grabbed the doctor's hand and said, "I'm dizzy." Well, the changed tone of "I'm dizzy" and the normal reaction of the pupils allowed the doctor to confirm that the young man in front of him had woken up. As for the slurred speech, it was not his responsibility. That was the responsibility of the brain doctor. The doctor said in fluent English, "Mr. Li Feng, do you feel uncomfortable anywhere else?" Li Feng was stunned. "The name is indeed my name, but brother, which hospital is this? Why do they all speak English? Except for my name, I don't understand a word of the rest of the English language." Seeing that Li Feng had no reaction, the doctor turned to the black nurse behind him and said, "Is his brain CT done?" The nurse nodded and said, "It has been placed on the brain doctor's desk." After hesitating for a moment, the nurse glanced at Li Feng and continued, "The police are still waiting to ask Li Feng, do you want them to come in?" The doctor thought for a while, then turned to look at Li Feng, who looked confused, shrugged, and said, "Although at present, I don't think the police can ask anything, but I still give the police 5 minutes of questioning time. Remember to remind the police that the patient needs to rest." After saying that, the doctor turned and left. What reason did he have to stay in the ward when the patient was awake? You must know that he is very busy. Li Feng was not the only one injured in this car accident. After a while, Li Feng was confused as he watched 2 fat white policemen follow the black nurse into his ward. "What's going on? My family sent me abroad for treatment after I had an attack? Why are all of them foreigners?" A policeman pulled a chair in front of Li Feng, sat down, took out a folder from the information bag and said, "Li Feng, English name Austin, 2nd generation Chinese, born in New York, parents died in an accident last year. These information are correct, right?" Another policeman standing at the end of the bed had a hint of apology on his face, drew a circle in front of his face with his right hand, and said, "I'm sorry, Mr. Li Feng, my colleague has face blindness for Asians, so we need to ask for your basic information to confirm that it is you." Li Feng didn't care what the two were asking, he only knew that he didn't understand a word except the 2 words Li Feng. Realizing that he was abroad, Li Feng said awkwardly in poor Chinese, "Sorry, I don't understand what you are saying." The 2 policemen were stunned. They did hear that Li Feng was speaking Chinese, but they didn't know what he meant. The policeman holding Li Feng's information flipped through the information in his hand, glanced at his colleague inexplicably, and said, "There is no record of Li Feng going abroad, nor does it show that Li Feng's previous school has Chinese courses. It is estimated that he was taught by his deceased Chinese parents." After saying that, the policeman who was flipping through the information looked at Li Feng unkindly, "What's the point of speaking Chinese in front of me? Does it show that you are cultured?" At this time, the patient lying next to Li Feng leaned over and said to the police, "He said he couldn't understand what you were saying." The 2 policemen looked at each other, "Don't understand? You said that you are a 2nd generation Chinese who has never been abroad. You listen, read, and write in English every day. Now you tell me that you don't understand? Are you kidding me?" The nurse next to him was also stunned. She seemed to understand something and said hesitantly to the police, "Li Feng injured his brain in the car accident. Could this be the reason for his amnesia? Amnesia made him forget English, but remember Chinese." Faced with the police's confusion, the nurse said that she couldn't explain it. Who can explain the amnesia clearly? With the help of Li Feng's fellow patient's translation, Li Feng understood that the reason why he was lying in bed was because he had a car accident 2 hours ago. But Li Feng was confused. He didn't remember that he had a car accident, and, what did it mean that his parents died in an accident last year? "My parents are fine." When the fellow patient translated that Li Feng was only 18 years old and a 2nd generation Chinese, Li Feng suddenly understood what happened to him. Li Feng looked calm on the surface, but he shouted wildly in his heart, "My soul traveled across the ocean to New York, and then borrowed a corpse to revive? If there is a soul in this world, do zombies really exist? Is there any other world? It seems that I have made an amazing discovery. But amnesia is indeed a good excuse to deal with the police, and I have a doctor's certificate that I have a brain injury. The police can't do anything to me, but as long as I leave the hospital and return to China, does it matter whether I lose my memory or not? It doesn't matter. I can still buy vegetables. There is no need to continue the questioning. Let alone asking Li Feng to clarify his home address, the other party has lost his memory to the point that he can't even speak English. What else can the 2 policemen do? Break open Li Feng's brain to see if there is any memory of the car accident? Before the 2 policemen left, considering the severity of Li Feng's amnesia, they specially copied a copy of Li Feng's information and gave it to Li Feng, and left a business card. Under the translation of the patient, they said, "If you remember anything, remember to call us. This car accident is quite serious, so for us, the more witness testimonies, the better. A few days later, the doctor said that Li Feng could be discharged from the hospital. As for when the lost memory would be restored, the doctor said he didn't know, maybe tomorrow, maybe never. However, Li Feng said that he didn't care about the lost memory at all, and he didn't want to continue living in New York. Li Feng, who didn't want to stay in the hospital for a moment, changed his hospital gown on the spot and left the hospital directly. At the door of the hospital, Li Feng stopped a taxi and pointed the home address given by the police to the taxi, indicating where he was going. Along the way, the taxi driver kept saying something. Li Feng smiled and said that he didn't understand at first, until he saw a photo of Stark Industrial Park on the newspaper left by the previous passenger. Li Feng realized that something was wrong. He had seen this photo before. He remembered clearly that Tony in Iron Man 2 took this industrial park template home from Pepper's office, discovered and created new elements from it, and completely cured his palladium poisoning. Swallowing his saliva, Li Feng smiled and pointed at the photo and said to the taxi driver, "Tony Stark." The driver turned his head and looked at the photo. He thought Li Feng was asking him when the trade fair would open. He smiled and nodded and said, "Yes, the Stark Group's arms trade fair will open on Tuesday. Do you want to attend, sir?" Chapter 2 Spirit. He couldn't remember how Li Feng got out of the car or how he got home. He only knew that there really was a Stark Group in this world. Sitting on the sofa in the bedroom, Li Feng looked at the Captain America poster on the wall with dull eyes. If Li Feng came to a different world, and there happened to be a Stark Enterprise in this world, he said he would understand it, but in this world there is Tony and Captain America, so there is no need to say more. This is so appropriate. The Marvel Universe, that purple sweet potato spirit, is a dangerous world where half the people die with the snap of a finger. Li Feng's mind is very messed up. In the original world, he had a loving wife and a child who started to talk. To be honest, if he had a choice, he would rather pay money to transfer the opportunity to travel. He is not Long Aotian, and he has no plugins or systems. He cannot and dare not act as a hero in the Marvel Universe without any cheats. He is just an ordinary person who cannot be ordinary anymore. Now he just hopes that he can return to his original world and hear his child call him Dad. After a long time, Li Feng smiled bitterly and returned to his room, preparing to pack his luggage and return home. He had no choice. As an ordinary person, he felt that he would feel much safer in his home country compared to New York, which was experiencing one wave of danger after another. And with his understanding of future development, he felt that he could develop in the direction of real estate. If you can't be a real estate tycoon, you can still be a landlord and have enough food and clothing for the rest of your life. Maybe you can find a wife from your previous life and renew your relationship. Tony still has several years to become Iron Man, so it's almost 20 years before the purple sweet potato snaps his fingers. It doesn't matter if he dies. Anyway, I can be resurrected in 5 years due to the efforts of those superheroes. Then I will be one of those 5. The year is a big holiday. While planning what he was going to do after returning to China, Li Feng walked into the body's parents' room. He wanted to see if there was anything valuable in the room that he could sell to use as startup capital for his return to China. In order to raise more funds, Li Feng searched carefully, fearing that he would miss something like a safe because he did not accept the memory of his predecessor. Not to mention, he actually found some good things on the back of the desk in his parents' study, and they were good things that made him change his plan to return to China. A hanging ring and a spell note written in Chinese and a diary explaining the principles of the spell in detail. When Li Feng found the Xian ring and recognized what it was at a glance, he was still a little confused and couldn't believe that one of his parents was a mage. Although in Li Feng's eyes, the mages in the Marvel world are actually just monks who use magic power. A mage who can't even create a fireball dares to call himself a mage? Even if Gandalf, the melee mage, spends all his skill points on physical fitness, he can at least use the illumination spell to blind his opponent's eyes. What about you? Except for the ancient one who has lived for who knows how many years and absorbs power from the dark space, who can throw out the spells in his hands, what about the remaining mages? Apart from the portal being released from the air by this group of mages, which other spell can leave the body? As the mage's signature spell, Fireball, except for a few bosses, what about the rest of the mage? The Magic Shield Handshake and the Air Blade Handshake are all mages' strong melee combat style. Do you want to carry forward the melee combat spirit of the god envoy Yamai Gandalf? Complaints come true, Li Feng still grinned and put the hanging ring on his right hand. He clearly remembered what Mo Du said in the movie, proficient use of the hanging ring is very important in magic. It can help us travel freely through various universes. Although in the movie, Li Feng only saw mages using the portal as a means of transportation for traveling on the earth and not for traveling to other universes, he said, it is an extraordinary prop after all. Do I want to go to Kathmandu? Kamataj approached Master Guyi. Since one of his parents is a mage, maybe Guyi can accept me as his disciple. After putting on the hanging ring, Li Feng sat in front of his desk and opened the diary left by his parents. For a long time, Li Feng felt a little headache. It was true that the diary belonged to his parents, but the real owner of the diary was his grandfather. Moreover, the diary also stated that his predecessor's grandfather only learned 3 kinds of spells due to qualification issues, and eventually died of old age. As for his parents, although his grandfather taught some, his qualifications were worse than his grandfather's, so he naturally gave up learning magic. Li Feng was a little helpless. Although he wanted to become a powerful mage, according to his grandfather's diary, Li Feng had been taught by his grandfather when he was a child, but his qualifications were only slightly better than his father's, and his qualifications for learning magic were still worse than his grandfather's. In the words of his grandfather, it would be good to learn 2 kinds of magic in this life. Li Feng rubbed his forehead and thought about it, and decided that he should try to practice for a while. After all, his body is still the same, but his soul has changed. Maybe he has good qualifications now? Li Feng closed the diary of his journey that recorded his grandfather's hard work in practicing magic, and opened the magic notebook. In the notebook, there are 3 kinds of spells that Grandpa knows. A portal that can teleport to 10 meters away, a mirror space that can hold half the size of a mouse, and a spirit body out of body spell that counts in seconds. From the diary, Li Feng already knew the importance of the spirit body in practicing magic. If a mage wants to successfully cast a spell, he not only needs to concentrate, but also needs to borrow his own mana. Although ordinary people have mana or energy in their bodies, it is too weak, so weak that they cannot sense it at all. However, the spirit body is different. It can not only strengthen its own sense of mana, but also allow mages to absorb energy from various universes. It can be said that the spirit out of the body is a necessary skill for a powerful mage. Li Feng lowered his head and read the spiritual practice method word by word. It is related to the future, so it is not too careful. After a long time, Li Feng, who tried to practice the spirit out of the body, felt an inexplicable sense of familiarity. It was probably the physical instinct memory of his previous practice. It is strange to say that others have traveled through time and space with various golden fingers, but he has no golden fingers and no memory of his previous life. Fortunately, his grandfather's notes were written in Chinese, otherwise he might have missed the opportunity to become a mage. Who made him a poor student, and it was impossible for him to spend time translating the English version of the notes. After a while, a transparent spirit stood up from the chair. Before Li Feng cheered 3 times to celebrate that he had made the spirit out of the body in one go, he looked at his small belly and the motionless body sitting on the chair in confusion. The body is still the same body, but the spirit does not look like Li Feng in the physical body. His small belly has reminded him that his spirit looks like Li Feng in his previous life. Li Feng in the spirit form also has a feeling that the connection between him and the physical body is slowly disconnected. If the spirit does not return to the physical body before the connection is disconnected, he will completely lose the physical body and become a lonely ghost, or the kind of soul returning to a foreign land. Li Feng did not dare to think about it any further. He hurriedly let the spirit return to the physical body. With a pale face, he buried his head in reading the knowledge about spirits, hoping to find some clues to solve the current doubts. At the same time, he also gave up the plan to go to Kamartaj. Just because his spirit and physical body do not match, it would be strange if Guyi, who has been guarding against the invasion of the alien world all his life, did not pinch his neck and ask him what species he is. There was no clue in the spell notes, but Li Feng found records about spirits in the diary. The spirit body is the projection of the soul. The spirit body naturally looks like the soul, and the body and soul are closely related and influence each other. So from the side, the body looks like the soul, and vice versa. Li Feng kept thinking about the words of close connection and mutual influence, and suddenly understood something. My soul is an uncle with a small belly, which is nothing like the body, causing my connection with the body to be very weak, so when I woke up in the hospital, my reaction was so slow. After a few days of recuperation, although my reaction is still slow, it is within the normal range. so it is the body and soul that are constantly strengthening the connection between the two under the influence of each other. According to this, my soul will become a young man after a while, and my spirit will not be disconnected as soon as it leaves the body. It just won't cause the body to age faster, right? After all, my soul is also affecting the body. It shouldn't. Compared with the body, the existence of the soul, which is suspected to be energy, is easier to change. Thinking of this, Li Feng scratched his head and decided that it would be better for him not to leave the body before the soul is completely integrated with the body. Opening the spell notes, looking at the contents about basic practice in the notes, Li Feng studied them word by word again. As the old saying goes, without a solid foundation, there is no tall building. Li Feng did not notice after careful study that not long after his spirit left his body, a black wizard in a robe sensed the fluctuation of the spell and hurried to Li Feng's residence. He looked at Li Feng from a distance and breathed a sigh of relief. The wizard knew that Li Feng was the grandson of Lao Li, and he had practiced for a period of time when he was a child, but he was forced to give up because of his poor aptitude. The wizard smiled and muttered, "I came here immediately after receiving the alarm, but it turned out that you, the little guy, were making trouble." The wizard shook his head and turned away. As long as there is no invasion of creatures from another world, the little guy is interested in spells. Without the guidance of a mentor, your future, haha. At this time, Li Feng, who was constantly studying basic knowledge, also realized what mistakes he had made. The three temples on Earth are not easy to deal with. They monitor the fluctuations of the magic power of the entire world. Realizing this, Li Feng stood up and prepared to close the window, but unfortunately his slow reaction came up again. Damn, I was just out of my body for a few seconds, why is the network stuck again? Can't I still play games? A few days later, Li Feng sold everything he could sell. He had to sell it. What kind of work could he do with his body that could delay time? Without a job, there would be no source of income. How could he practice magic? The most important thing is that he can't even speak English. What kind of job can he find? If he doesn't sell his family property, will he have to live on the northwest wind? A magician can't just live on the northwest wind to fill his stomach. Besides, he is not a magician yet. In New York, is there any place suitable for Li Feng who doesn't speak English to survive? After thinking for a few seconds, Li Feng rented a small single room in Chinatown with all his property. There was no other way. He had to spend sparingly before he had a source of income. And this stay lasted for 2 years. During the past 2 years, Li Feng did some odd jobs during the day to earn some pocket money and learn English. At night, he returned to his small room to study the basics of magic and meditate constantly, so that he could speed up his progress when he formally practiced magic in the future. Chapter 3 Plug-in Online. A suitable environment does help people learn. Just like Li Feng, he has been strolling around Chinatown for 2 years. All he hears and sees is English. With his body's instinctive memory, he has long been fluent in English. Sometimes Li Feng laughs at himself. If I had studied so hard during the college entrance examination, I would have been able to get out of the Earth and the Milky Way, not to mention applying for Tsinghua University and Peking University. In addition to making Li Feng completely accustomed to life in New York, 2 years also made his soul and body completely integrated. The worry that the body would age under the influence of the uncle's soul did not happen, but Li Feng lowered his head and touched his belly, and his mouth twitched. You are still the best to me. You have traveled through time and space and changed your body, but you still stick with me. Little belly, does this mean that you are my true love? Li Feng laughed at himself and said that it felt good to be loved by the fat on his belly, and he got up and returned to the small single room. Drinking beer and grilling steak on the rooftop is to celebrate the complete fusion of the soul and the body. Since the beer has been drunk and the steak has been burnt, Li Feng should naturally go downstairs to do business. Returning to the small single room of less than 30 square meters, Li Feng closed the doors and windows and took a deep breath. While concentrating highly, he stretched his hands forward and slowly drew a circle. Unfortunately, the imagined magic did not even spark. In this regard, Li Feng was not discouraged. He didn't know how many times he had tried to cast spells before. It was normal for him not to have magic sparks. It was only in recent months that with the fusion of the soul and the body, occasionally sparks would appear when casting spells to comfort his patience that was about to be lost. After practicing for half an hour, Li Feng suddenly felt a rhythm from the energy. He had an intuition that as long as he moved slightly along the flow of this energy, a perfect practice casting would be completed. Thinking of this, Li Feng quickly gathered his mind and stretched out his hands again. First, a 50 cm long orange-yellow light appeared between his hands. Then, as Li Feng drew a circle with his hands, the orange-yellow light drew a ring with sparks. Before Li Feng could show his smiling face, the orange-yellow ring turned into sparks and dissipated in the room. Although the spell failed in the end, Li Feng still grinned, at least there is progress, and it is not an ordinary progress. As long as I fully grasp the rhythm of this energy, I can successfully cast the spell. Glancing at the ring on his left hand and the figure wearing monk clothes on the computer monitor, Li Feng sat cross-legged on the ground and recalled the charm of this energy. As for the temple mage standing on the top of a building in the distance on the monitor screen and observing him, Li Feng just pretended not to see it. Li Feng himself didn't know how many times the other party appeared after he cast the spell. Anyway, Li Feng found the other party's figure more than 3 times, and the number of surveillances that he didn't find was probably more. After a while, Li Feng opened his eyes, looked at the surveillance screen helplessly, and muttered, "Gone? There is a magic temple in New York. They can always find my mana fluctuations at the first time, but they know me but don't come to contact me. Is it because of my deceased grandfather, or do they think my talent is too poor and there is no need to contact me? Or is it just simple surveillance, as long as I don't fall into darkness like Cassilis, they will ignore me? At first, I was afraid that you would find out because of the abnormality of the spirit body, so I wanted to hide from you, but now that you don't come to find me, I will find an opportunity to find you in Kathmandu." After sorting out the clues, Li Feng scratched his forehead and continued to practice his casting process. With the first successful casting, the subsequent casting is as simple as opening the Ren and Du meridians. After only a few practices, Li Feng felt that he could successfully condense the mana outside the body in a quiet environment. If it is in a noisy environment, Li Feng said that he still needs more practice. As for fighting, don't make a fuss. He now needs a quiet environment to cast spells. It's still too early to move and cast spells in battle. After a long time, Li Feng sat at the head of the bed, holding a bunch of beautiful photos of various countries. Now that the spell casting practice has ended, all that remains is to practice diligently. He thinks it's time to practice the portal spell. In his previous life, he had a heart to travel whenever he wanted, but unfortunately the wallet in his pocket held him back, pointing at his wife and children's diapers and milk powder to prevent him from turning his idea into reality. In this life, although he has obtained extraordinary power and has the opportunity to collect 6 infinite gems to start the road home, he hasn't collected them yet. And now that he can use the portal, he has the opportunity to travel to various countries without buying air tickets and applying for visas. Why should he wrong himself? At least it doesn't matter if he wanders around in this world before going home. Anyway, before the advent of Iron Man, for him with magic, as long as he doesn't wander to the battlefield where shells are flying, the Marvel world is still safe. Picking out a photo of an abandoned train station from a pile of photos, Li Feng grinned and began to practice the portal spell. Li Feng didn't know where the address of the photo he chose came from. He only knew that there was no one near the abandoned train station and the environment nearby was good. As for whether the wizards in the Mage Temple would come to arrest him after he was teleported there, he was not worried at all. He could tell that the magic came from his grandfather. He was not afraid that the people in Camartage would say he was a thief. His soul had already merged with his body, and even Ancient One could not see any flaws. What else did he have to worry about? What if he was caught? Maybe he could go to Camartage to learn more about magic. At most, the travel plan would be shelved for a while. Li Feng stared at the photo and kept constructing the abandoned train station in the photo in his mind. When casting the portal, only by constructing the image of where you want to go in detail in your mind can you quickly open the portal, otherwise you will only see a group of sparks that keep circling. In Argentina, an abandoned train station is the address in Li Feng's photo. In this abandoned train station, Elias Starr is doing the final inspection of the quantum channel equipment. At the beginning, Starr and Pym studied quantum science together in S.H.I.E.L.D., but Pym accused Stam of the wrong research direction, fired Stam, and slandered his reputation. Now, Stam will gamble everything to refute Hank Pym with his research results. As long as he succeeds, Hank Pym's original accusation against him will disappear, and he will regain his original reputation. After checking the equipment, Starr opened the quantum channel with excitement, but he found something wrong after a while. He didn't know what went wrong, causing the equipment to explode. Although Starr was afraid, he felt that the quantum channel could still be rescued. He ordered his wife and daughter to leave immediately and resolutely returned to the equipment to make a final struggle. Unfortunately, everything is over. The explosion will still explode. On the other side, Li Feng finally constructed the scene of the abandoned train station in his mind, and a portal finally appeared in front of him. Before Li Feng could be proud of himself as a wizard who could open a portal, and a genius who succeeded in a few times, the stable portal suddenly shook, and then the original orange-yellow portal turned blue-white, and the light circle that could see the opposite scene turned into a light curtain. Li Feng was a little confused. What's going on? How did the promised portal become like this? Before Li Feng could come to his senses, a violent shock wave came from the blue-white portal. This shock wave not only stuck Li Feng's face firmly to the wall, but also moved the portal towards Li Feng. In the end, the light curtain in the portal completely wrapped Li Feng and quickly disappeared, leaving only the white short-sleeved blue-white jeans, flip-flops, and boxer briefs that Li Feng was wearing today. Before Li Feng understood what was happening to him, he was wrapped in a white light and passed through various illusory bubble worlds. He felt like he was stuffed into a rubber pipe, and he didn't know where the exit of the pipe was. After a while, Li Feng, who was squeezed out of the rubber pipe, knelt on the ground and complained bitterly, "Damn, what the hell is my portal? It was said that one step would lead to another country, but how come I didn't walk, but was squeezed out? The portal is a cow, I am the milk, and it can be squeezed out. This whole body hurts, I will never use the portal to travel, this thing can easily cause psychological shadows." When Li Feng felt that he was about to vomit all his bile, an old man behind him reached out and supported Li Feng and said, "Sir, are you okay?" In the old man's surprised eyes, he found that his hand went straight through Li Feng's body, as if Li Feng did not exist in front of him, but a three-dimensional projection. The old man subconsciously thought that this was some kind of street art, and he looked up to find nearby cameras and other equipment. After all, in his eyes, the funny person must be nearby observing his ugly appearance, such as being scared by Li Feng, thinking that the other party was a ghost or some supernatural being. Not to mention, the old man really found something abnormal, such as a jar flying towards him at a high speed above his head. What kind of trick is this? Do you still want to scare me? Don't you know that I am famous for my courage? It's just a projection. If you have the guts, just hit me. Unlike the old man who looked at the jar hitting him calmly, Li Feng also found something unusual about himself. First of all, he felt the pain of being torn apart, and there was nothing on his body except the hanging ring on his left hand, not to mention clothes, not even shorts. Okay, portal, you win, you shouldn't call it a portal, you should call it a stripping artifact, damn it. Li Feng's face is not only thick, but also very thick. He endured the pain of his body being torn apart, covered his crotch and stood up to check the surrounding situation. If possible, Li Feng wanted to find a piece of clothing first, or a newspaper if not, at least to cover his face first. He didn't want his photo to appear in the news tomorrow, or a photo with a clear facial expression. "Sir, can you give me a piece of clothing?" Feeling a little cold, Li Feng asked the old man for a piece of clothing in confusion, and looked up at the sky following the old man's gaze. He clearly remembered that it was summer, how come it became winter after leaving the portal? And in the sky, a jar was quickly smashing towards him, and a guy with black smoke all over his body crawled out of it. What was going on? Chapter 4, Second Crossing. The scene in front of him made Li Feng somewhat familiar. He tilted his head and thought, there seems to be such a scene in the movie The Sorcerer's Apprentice. I remember it was among Merlin's 3 apprentices, Barstow and the villain Hafiz 10 years ago. During the fight, they were both imprisoned in an urn. 10 years later, Hafiz was the first to come out of the urn. After confirming that Barstow was still in the urn, he dropped the urn from the tall building, hoping to smash the urn and completely imprison Barstow in a different space. To be honest, Li Feng was quite puzzled when he watched this movie. There were several places where Barstow had the opportunity to kill Hafiz, but Barstow refused to kill him, and vice versa. The two of them were confused. Full of passion, looking like they are in love and don't want to kill. Li Feng curled his lips, suspecting that he had traveled through time again. While looking at Barstow's expression, he quickly stretched out his left hand and pointed it at Barstow. His right hand kept drawing circles in front of him to cast an unskilled portal spell. He wanted to save Barstow before he escaped from the urn, so that he could get close to him and learn the secret of rubbing fireballs from him. Of course, if possible, he would like to learn more, such as how to get rid of borrowing energy from the latitude and instead store mana in the body, and how to portray the Merlin magic ring. This is a good thing that can help him gather energy and assist him in speeding up his spell practice. There are also ion cannon spells that mages in this world must master, as well as spells such as accelerating and slowing down time. Think about it, in the Marvel world, apart from the Ancient One and Doctor Strange, who doesn't know where he is now, who else can control time? Once Li Feng learned to speed up and slow down time, he became excited just thinking about it. As for the movie in which two old men fell in love and killed each other for a woman, Li Feng expressed that he was not interested. When the time came, he would help if he could. If he couldn't, he would just eat popcorn and watch the show. Just when Barstow was about to grab the balcony to get out of the urn, a swirling orange-yellow light door appeared beneath him, and he watched helplessly as he passed through the door. The other end of the portal was in front of Li Feng. He only said "uh-oh" in a hurry when he saw the big jar hit him hard. But the ending was different from what Li Feng thought. The big jar went straight through his body and landed smoothly on the street. Barstow breathed a sigh of relief, climbed out of the urn with great difficulty and walked to Li Feng. He looked at Li Feng, who was naked, stared at Xianring and said, "Thank you for saving me, but can you do it differently next time?" "Big urn, it was almost smashed, and are you performing street performance art?" At this time, Li Feng was still focused on how the big urn penetrated his body, and did not pay attention to Barstow's question at all. Li Feng, with blurred eyes, looked at Barstow blankly and asked, "What's going on with me? I've become a ghost." Barstow squinted his eyes for a while, rolled his eyes, and pointed his right hand at Li Feng to help Li Feng stabilize his body, and said, "You are trapped in time and energy. Little problem, didn't your teacher teach you that you need to be careful at all times when practicing magic?" With Barstow's help, Li Feng, who felt the tearing pain all over his body gradually disappearing, frowned. "Time energy? Where did my time energy come from? When I cast the portal in the room, I seemed to feel a huge energy coming from the abandoned train station opposite. I wouldn't be so unlucky that I happened to meet Gu Yi studying time opposite. I was so unlucky that I met the boss the first time I used the portal." Barstow saw what Li Feng was thinking about, and glanced at Li Feng's white and tender belly. While taking off his windbreaker and putting it on Li Feng, he turned his head and saw the people around him looking at him with strange eyes, and said, "This is not the place. A great place to relax." Li Feng, who felt a little better after putting on his windbreaker, turned around and looked around, subconsciously saying, "Then where should I go to daze? I don't even know where this is. I don't care where you are in a daze. I'm still busy looking for the nesting doll where Morgana is imprisoned. I have no time to talk to you." Glancing at the Empire State Building in the distance, Barstow said with a plan in mind, "I still have something to do. I hope we can meet again when we are free next time. Goodbye, little rookie." After speaking, Barstow walked straight to the Empire State Building. "I want to leave before you even teach me the magic, but there is no door." Without saying a word, Li Feng quickly followed Barstow with bare feet and said, "Are you Mr. Barstow Black? I know you, and I also know what you are busy with." Barstow had been searching for the heir of Merlin for who knows how long, and he couldn't even explain the legend he left behind. Since the other party was a magician, he wasn't surprised at all that Barstow recognized him. He turned to look at Li Feng, and continued walking forward, warning, "Little rookie, it's time for you to go home and find your mentor. My affairs are not something you can get involved in." "I don't have a mentor," Li Feng shrugged and followed Barstow closely. "I learned spells, portals, mirror spaces, and spirits from a spell notebook left by my deceased grandfather." Barstow's reaction was as expected by Li Feng, especially his expression after learning that Li Feng practiced spiritual body magic, which was exactly as he expected. Spirit body. Barstow stopped and looked at Li Feng with squinted eyes. Others don't know about spirit bodies, but he clearly knows what spirit is. He has been looking for the introduction of Merlin all his life, just to completely eliminate the evil mage Morgan who tried to recruit an undead army through the spirit summoning ritual. The focus is on Morgan's ritual, which is to summon spirits. It can only be said that the two worlds have different names for different objects. At least in Barstow's eyes, spirits have another name in this world, the undead. He subconsciously felt that Li Feng didn't know the danger and difficulty of spirit magic, especially when Li Feng said in his self-introduction just now that he had no mentor and was studying alone. With a serious face, Barstow felt it necessary to let the rookie know what danger is, just like the rookie was brave enough to experiment with quantum energy. If it weren't for his help just now, the entanglement of quantum energy would make the rookie disappear from the world completely soon. Without waiting for Basto to speak, Li Feng understood from the other party's eyes that the other party had some misunderstandings about the spirit he said. He didn't want Basto to have any misunderstandings about him, as he was still thinking about learning magic. Li Feng hurriedly explained, the spirit I refer to is the projection of the soul. In a sense, the spirit can affect the soul, but the spirit is not the soul. After the spirit leaves the body, the person will not die. Of course, it will not die if it leaves for too long, after all, it will affect the soul left in the body. As Li Feng continued to explain, Basto understood what Li Feng meant by spirit. The spirit is not the soul? Basto silently wondered whether Li Feng's spirit magic could rescue his lover. His lover, Veronica, had sealed Morgan with her body, which was also related to the spirit. After looking at Li Feng, Basto turned around and asked Li Feng while walking, "What's your name?" Li Feng said, "Li Feng, you can also call me Austin." Before Li Feng explained what a spirit was, Basto didn't want Li Feng to run around. He felt it necessary to teach this rookie. Anyway, he was also going to find David. In addition to finding the nesting dolls that imprisoned Morgan, he also had a plan to teach David to become the successor of Merlin. Since it was teaching an apprentice, one was teaching, and the other two were also teaching, there was not much difference. And it can prevent Austin from going astray. Oh, and the portal spell seems interesting. I just wonder if Austin will explain it to me in detail, just like he explained what a spirit is. Basto complained, and said, "Okay, Austin, follow me before you explain what a spirit is, but I have something else to do, so please shut up and move your legs." Li Feng shrugged, indicating that he would shut up and move his legs immediately. "Are you going to save the male protagonist David? By the way, has David been targeted by Hafiz now? Being chased by several wolves is not a good memory." The two went straight to the Empire State Building. Li Feng enviously watched Barstow lock David's location with a wave of his hand, and easily awakened a statue of an iron eagle as his mount. Standing on the iron eagle, Basto waved to Li Feng and said, "Hurry up, little rookie, I'm in a hurry." He had sensed that besides Merlin's dragon ring, there was also the breath of Hafiz near David. If he didn't rush to the scene to rescue David, not only would Merlin's descendants be dead, but even the nesting dolls that held Morgan would also fall into the hands of the enemy. He had just gotten some hope of rescuing Veronica, and Morgan came out to rule the world. Is there anything worse than this? When Li Feng climbed onto the Iron Eagle with a grin, Basto couldn't wait to order the Iron Eagle to fly to David. After a while, Li Feng looked down at the protagonist David, who was chased to the subway by the wolf pack, and Hafiz, who was wearing a top hat and grinning in the distance. Seeing that the wolf pack was about to tear the fallen David into pieces, Basto stretched out his hand and pointed, turning the wolf pack into little puppies, and ordered the Iron Eagle to attack Hafiz. David, who had recovered from the panic, subconsciously looked at Hafiz, who was chasing him. He ignored Barstow's question about the whereabouts of the nesting dolls and pointed at Hafiz and shouted, "Be careful." Barstow, who had lived for an unknown period of time, realized the danger behind him and subconsciously shot a water-like spell at Hafiz. Li Feng saw it clearly. The moment the water touched Hafiz, the flow of time around him slowed down, and this energy that slowed down the flow of time made him feel familiar. Base, who found that this place was not a suitable place for chatting, asked David to board the Iron Eagle and wait for the three people to return to the Empire State Building to ask about the whereabouts of the nesting dolls. When the Iron Eagle took off, Li Feng's mouth twitched slightly. He glanced at Hafiz, who always broke free from the time-slowing spell, and said in his heart, "Barstow, Barstow, you still say you love Veronica, look at Hafiz, who was in a daze just now, a fireball can destroy the other party, so why don't you kill him with such a good opportunity? I think you and Hafiz are the couple in love, and Veronica is just an excuse for you to avoid worldly eyes. By the way, is there a magic spell to turn a man into a woman? If you turn Hafiz into a woman, there won't be so many troubles. If it doesn't work, you can turn into a woman. Anyway, I just want your magic knowledge, and it won't hinder your pursuit of true love. Maybe I will give you a big gift when you get married, such as the legal provisions of Denmark, Thailand, and other countries regarding same-sex marriage. What do you think?" Chapter 5: Obtaining the Magic Gem. Returning to the rooftop of the Empire State Building, David eagerly jumped off the Iron Eagle and gasped for air. trying to convince himself that the experience he had just experienced with the wolf, Hafiz, and others was all an illusion. Li Feng didn't step off the Iron Eagle until Barstow woke him up from deep thought. He kept recalling the familiar feeling of Barstow casting a spell at the subway station to slow down the flow of time around Hafiz. Li Feng, who was standing aside, ignored Barstow and walked down. Tai Ying and David were explaining how dangerous the Matryoshka dolls were and so on. He just kept muttering, "Where does the time energy in my body come from?" Just when David's storage box containing the Merlin Dragon Ring appeared in front of David with a bang, Li Feng thought about where the time energy in his body came from. In the Marvel Universe, time is related to the quantum realm. Just like after the purple sweet potato snaps his fingers, Ant-Man, who is trapped in the quantum realm, says that his time has not passed 5 years, and the superheroes also go back to the past through the quantum realm. Collect unlimited gems. Li Feng remembered that he was introduced in Ant-Man 2, saying that the villain Ava became a ghost agent of SHIELD because her father Star secretly experimented with a quantum channel and exploded somewhere in Argentina. Li Feng covered his face and whispered to himself, "I can't be so unlucky, right? The place where I opened the door was where Star was conducting experiments, and why did I choose the time period when the quantum channel exploded? Quantum is time, and the portal itself allows me to travel through various universes. It is a space ability. So with the combination of time and space, does travel happen?" Looking away at Barstow, Li Feng rubbed his forehead and muttered, "It doesn't seem so unlucky. At least I can travel to other worlds, but I don't know if I can return to the Marvel Universe. The only way is to obtain the Infinity Stones from the Marvel Universe. I have the greatest chance of hearing my children call me Daddy when I return to the original world. I just want to go home, why don't you cheat like this?" David, who didn't believe there were magicians in this world and just wanted to live a normal life, readily agreed after Barstow promised to disappear from the other world as long as David helped him find the Matryoshka doll. Taking advantage of Barstow's opportunity to use the air control spell to track the Matryoshka doll, Li Feng walked up to David and whispered, "Are you really ready to waste your talent and not want to become a magician?" Li Feng didn't believe that magic had no appeal to David. After all, magic sounded mysterious, exciting and interesting, which was very attractive to young people. David showed a reluctant smile to Li Feng and said, "You don't understand how I feel when someone names a mental illness after me. It's useless to even transfer schools to escape all this, just like somewhere in New York now. There are still people talking about David Stetler-type psychosis. I just want to forget about the mystery house, forget about magic, forget about it all, and live a normal life." Li Feng, who knew what was about to happen, shrugged, patted David on the shoulder, and said mysteriously, "You will regret it, I bet 10 cents. David looked at Li Feng, who was barefoot and empty-handed, with disdain, and whispered to himself, "I see you don't even have one cent." On the other side, Barstow determined that the location of the Horcrux, the Matryoshka doll, was in the city center, and said, "I can track the Matryoshka doll, and so can Hafiz. We need to get the Matryoshka doll before the other party does." After saying that, Base was ready to leave the building. Li Feng knew that the Matryoshka dolls were in Chinatown. Li Feng, who had been living in New York's Chinatown in the Marvel world for 2 years, said that he was quite familiar with that place. Although he didn't know if there were different places in Chinatown in different worlds, it was not important. He is now standing high enough and can vaguely see the buildings in Chinatown, which is enough. Li Feng stretched out his hand to stop Barstow. While casting the portal, he stared at the building in the distance and said, "Maybe I can help." As soon as he finished speaking, the portal opened in front of the 3 people. Standing in front of the teleportation gate, Li Feng stood straight with his lower body, his upper body leaning forward slightly, his left hand on his belly, his right hand reaching towards the teleportation gate and said, "Is there any other means of transportation that can compare to teleportation?" Barstow was only slightly surprised. Although he had never seen a portal, it did not mean that he had not seen it. David was much more interesting. He pointed at the portal with a blank look on his face and looked at the top of another building in the portal. Barstow looked at the hanging ring without magic gems and Li Feng thoughtfully, and went straight through the portal without saying anything. David looked like he couldn't believe his eyes. He shrugged and walked towards the portal while muttering, "I must be crazy to believe that there is magic in this world." The 3 of them had just passed through the portal. Barstow felt uncomfortable when he heard David talking to himself. He was going to teach David a lesson and arouse David's interest in learning magic. The Merlin heir who had finally found him suspected this. Is there magic in the world? Let's see if you believe it or not after you learn a few simple magics. Then wait for you to step into the magical world and see whether you choose to be an ordinary person or a magician. As Barstow walked into the elevator, he taught David the rules of the mage, the first step of wearing a ring, how to release the fire-calling spell, etc. David was deeply suspicious that magic was a currently unknown science. Barstow was also observing Li Feng's expression when he was explaining magic. He was very curious. Li Feng clearly didn't have the necessary props to cast spells. It was just a strange ring with some magic power. How could he cast spells normally? Could he, like Merlin, be able to cast spells without the need for magic gems? As for Li Feng, he has no interest in listening to these boring basics. It's not like he doesn't know that molecules will burn after they vibrate. The problem is that he is different from Barstow and others. In this world, ordinary people only use 10% of their brains, while magicians such as Barstow use all of them. As for Li Feng, he doesn't think that his brain usage is at full power. If his brain is really used at full power, would he still be a scumbag? He must have become a top student in the original world. But Li Feng glanced at the ring in David's hand and thought, as long as I have a magic gem, and after learning the Merlin magic ring, it doesn't matter if I don't have a brain that can be used at full power. It's enough if I have magic power. Can you create a fireball or an ion cannon? After a while, the three people walked out of the building. Li Feng saw that China Street was bustling with people dancing dragons and hanging red lanterns. It is said that during the festive season, Li Feng misses his family even more. He unconsciously recalled his wife and his children. While looking at the joyful expressions on the faces of passers-by, he muttered in a low voice, "It's the new year, and I don't know how you are celebrating. Are you okay? I miss you." The lively voices covered up Li Feng's whispers. David on the side pulled Li Feng and said, "Austin, what's wrong with you?" Li Feng rubbed his face, wiped away the tears of lovesickness from the corners of his eyes, and said with a smile, "It's nothing, where is Barstow?" David pointed to the health center with the word acupuncture written on the side and said, "Barstow went up to find the Matryoshka dolls. Let's pay attention to Hafiz here." Li Feng looked at the stairs leading to the second floor and thought to himself, this time, Hafiz must have rushed to disguise himself as an old lady and ambush Barstow before he arrived, right? Before he could finish thinking about it, Li Feng covered his face and watched as a magician with braids, a naked upper body, and a five-clawed golden dragon around his waist fell in front of him. Li Feng knew this man, his name was Sun Long, and he was one of the magicians sealed by Barstow in the Matryoshka doll. In the movie, it was Hafiz who released him from the Matryoshka doll. Needless to say, since Sun Long appeared in front of him, Hafiz, who was in love with Barstow, must have been ambushing the acupuncture parlor. Before Sun Long could get up, Li Feng directly raised his foot and kicked Sun Long on the head, and ripped off the magic gem Sun Long was wearing on his right hand. He has been coveting magic gems for a long time. Since he can grab one now, why should he be polite? With this magic gem, the process of learning spells will be much simpler in the future. And Li Feng didn't believe it. Sun Long without the magic gem was no different from ordinary people. For him who had practiced fighting skills, as long as the opponent couldn't release the spell, he really wasn't afraid of Sun Long. After all, he was from the very beginning, he took the lead and hit Sun Long on the head with kicks and kicks. If this allowed his opponent to come back, he, Li Feng, would still put his face there. And in order for the people around him not to meddle in Li Feng's business, Li Feng kicked him and shouted, "You know how to gamble. I even lost my clothes and still gamble here. I don't care about my wife and children at home. How did my sister do it back then? If you like me, I won't teach you a lesson today and let you know the consequences of bullying my sister." Needless to say, the Chinese people around me really didn't know whether they should step forward to take care of him. After all, the brother-in-law was teaching his brother-in-law a lesson about gambling and they couldn't say much. From the window on the second floor of the acupuncture hall, Barstow looked at Sun Long, who was already unconscious, and swallowed back the words that reminded David and Li Feng that they should run away. Sun Long was almost concussed by Li Feng, and he reminded him, "Damn it, reminding Li Feng not to kill anyone in front of the public is normal operation." Barstow, who turned back to the house, had already noticed where Hafiz was hiding. He controlled Hafiz 3 times, 5 times 5 times 2, and jumped out of the window after getting the Matryoshka doll. He said to David and Li Feng, "Let's go." Li Feng spat at Sun Long, who had a bruised nose and face and was still in a coma. He turned around and pulled the stunned David away and said, "Scum, if you gamble once in the future, I will let my sister and you divorce." The people around looked at Sun Long, whose chest was still heaving, and then at Li Feng, who left gracefully, and said silently in their hearts, "You loser and you don't even have any clothes on, your gambler, you haven't even let him and your sister divorce now, what's your heart big enough?" David now only felt that his impression of the magician had been kicked into the trash can by Li Feng's punches and kicks. He stared at Li Feng in disbelief and silently cursed in his heart, "My David Stetler type. The mental illness must have escalated. Not to mention the hallucinations, it has also escalated. This guy is definitely not the elegant magician in me. Or is this guy's main profession a barbarian, and he occasionally appears as a magician? Yes, he occasionally guest starred, just like when Austin needed to use the portal to travel, he guest starred as the magician." Li Feng glanced at the second floor of the acupuncture hall, turned to look at Barstow, and said silently in his heart, "This is the second time you have let Hafez go. To this day, to this place, I swear, there is definitely adultery, please forgive me for being curious, but I really want to know what role Veronica is between you two?" Chapter 6 Trading and Learning. Although Li Feng felt good about beating up Sun Long, he was a little afraid now. He was not afraid of Sun Long's revenge, but he was afraid of disrupting Bastow's plan and causing the other party's displeasure, thus costing him the opportunity to learn magic. After all, in the movie, it was Barstow who gave Sun Long the fatal blow, but David also successfully used the fire calling technique before killing Sun Long. Now, Sun Long is simply reduced to a soy sauce, and was directly KO'd by Li Feng's fist. I don't know if David is still interested in magic now. If he is not interested and still wants to be an ordinary person, Li Feng thinks that Barstow will peel off his skin and make it into leather shoes, which will be stepped on forever. For the sake of the precious skin produced by his original factory, Li Feng felt that it was time for him to save it, such as teaching David how to cast spells now. Li Feng casually picked up a small piece of paper from the ground, handed it to David and said, "David, do you want to try if you can summon flames? If you could summon flames out of thin air, how attractive would you be to beautiful girls?" He still didn't believe it. David's age was exactly the age he was trying to attract the attention of the girl he liked, just like a male peacock would open his tail at a certain time to attract the female peacock's attention and show his charm. In addition, this is the United States. A country where no one talks about the other party's promiscuity as long as they are not married. Will David give up using his identity as a magician to attract girls? Anyway, Li Feng said he didn't believe it. Li Feng didn't need to finish what he said. David had already thought that he had met the girl he had always liked before, Betsy Barney. It had been 10 years. How could he not say that it was fate to meet again? If he were a magician, what would he do? Wouldn't it attract Betsy's attention more? It seems feasible and the magician seems pretty cool. Of course, before doing this, you need to make sure that you are not hallucinating. David looked at Li Feng, then at Barstow, and decided to try to see if he could light the small piece of paper in his hand before making the final choice. Li Feng patted David on the shoulder and said with a smile, "Pay attention to the first step, get rid of distracting thoughts, strengthen your faith, and believe that you can do it." After saying that, Li Feng walked to Barstow and watched David's personal performance. He breathed a sigh of relief and thought, as long as this kid successfully casts the spell, will he still be far away from entering the magical world? Barstow glanced at Li Feng on the side. He didn't think that David would fail to cast the spell. After all, the other person was the successor of Merlin that he had been looking for. Instead, he was unhappy that Li Feng used a woman to tempt David to practice magic. What time is it now? Hafez has run out of the Matryoshka doll to stir up trouble and prepare to release Morgan to destroy the world. There is no time left for David to pick up the girl. However, in order for David to be interested in magic, Barstow said that he would tolerate it for the time being, and would only wait until David learned magic to destroy Morgan, and David would do as he pleased. Perhaps David was truly a genius. After only a few attempts, he lit the piece of paper in his hand on fire. David was so frightened that he immediately let go of the piece of paper in his hand. He danced excitedly while pointing at the burning piece of paper and said to Barstow, "I made it, I made it." At this time, Barstow didn't say anything about getting the Matryoshka doll to clear things up with David. He looked at David and said, "Yes, you succeeded. If you want to further learn magic, we need to find a place with few people. As for how to prevent Hafiz from finding the Matryoshka doll, Basto needs to set up a magic circle to contain the magical atmosphere. Otherwise, like in the movie when Barstow made the Matryoshka doll invisible, Hafiz would really not be able to find it. Strangely enough, since Hafiz was able to find the Matryoshka doll before Barstow, he can definitely find the Matryoshka doll again. Moreover, Hafiz had been holding the Matryoshka doll for a while, so he might have planted a tracking spell on the doll. After hearing Barstow's request to learn magic, David blurted out, "I know a place." Soon after, the three people took a taxi to a nearby deserted place. David opened the iron fence and said, "This was originally a subway station, but it is now abandoned. They asked me to do experiments here, because some experiments it's quite dangerous." After walking underground and returning to the station, Barstow walked to the table and put down the Matryoshka doll and made it invisible. He turned around and took out a matchbox-sized magic book from his pocket and handed it to David. He smiled and said, "I didn't have the chance to give it to you before." Your magic book?" David raised his eyebrows, gestured to the magic book in his memory and said, "I thought the magic book was bigger than this." Li Feng was slightly envious. He actually wanted a magic book, and he didn't know if Basto had any extra magic books. If so, Li Feng wouldn't mind exchanging the 3 spells he knows, even if it's a second-hand magic book. After all, this thing not only records everything that happens in the magical world, but can also update it in real time. There are even photos of David breaking into the mystery house in Barstow 10 years ago and leaving with a horrified look on his face. This is amazing. With it, when Li Feng returns to his original world, not only can he see the movements of Ancient One all the time, but he can just check to see if there are any temple mages near his home. It is enough to make Li Feng like it. After handing the magic book to David, Barstow rubbed his hands and prepared to carve the Merlin ring and officially accepted David as a magic apprentice. Li Feng, besides being envious, secretly held the magic gem he snatched from Sun Long in his hand, and watched intently as Basto carved out the Merlin ring, hoping to remember how to carve the Merlin ring on the ground. Unfortunately, by the time Barstow officially accepted David as his apprentice and stepped out of the Merlin ring, Li Feng didn't even remember the Merlin ring, let alone understand what the Merlin ring was. Taking advantage of David's search for protective gear, Li Feng walked to Basto, who was carving the breath-suppressing array, and said, "Mr. Black, can I exchange my unique spells for your teaching?" In order to let Basto teach him, Li Feng added, "My unique spells include the spirit leaving the body." This tone is very righteous. I have lived for 1,000 years. Are you so confident? In addition to the portal I have seen before, what other unique spells do you have? Basto glanced at Li Feng and said with a smile, "Are you sure this is your unique spell?" "Of course." Li Feng said with certainty, and at the same time added in his heart, "Unless the Ancient One of this world has come and left a legacy, my spell is definitely unique." Basto, who had long wanted to teach Li Feng, folded his arms, raised his eyebrows and said, "While David hasn't put on his protective gear yet, tell me about your unique spells first." While speaking, Basto deliberately emphasized the word unique. In response, Li Feng said that he heard the distrust in the words, but did not refute it. Sometimes it is actually the right choice to slap the face with facts. "You have seen the portal spell, so I won't say much." Li Feng looked around, sat down on a chair, and said while letting his spirit leave his body, "This is the spirit leaving his body. Ordinary people can't see spirits, but as Merlin's apprentice and 777 level Basto, he clearly saw the spirit floating out of Li Feng's body, while the body was still breathing normally, but it felt like a vegetable. And Basto also understood that the spirit Li Feng was talking about was indeed related to the soul, but that was all. The soul is the soul, and the spirit is the spirit. After a while, Li Feng, whose spirit returned to his body, stood up and scratched his head, saying with a bit of embarrassment, "There are also spells in the mirror space, but I have never practiced it. I will explain the steps of casting to you in detail. How about you try it yourself?" When David returned with his armor like a tortoise shell, Li Feng had reached an agreement with Basto. Basto was willing to teach Li Feng magic and give him a magic book personally. Of course, he didn't want to accept him as a disciple, but he didn't have the time. If possible, he even wanted David not to teach him, because he had a crazy plan in his mind now. The mirror space can completely isolate the real world. If Morgany is imprisoned in the mirror space, how can Morgany perform the summoning ritual? There are no spell casting materials. Don't say that Morgany can't summon spirits successfully in the scene space. Even if Morgany succeeds in summoning spirits in the mirror space, how can a person who doesn't understand the mirror space escape from the space? Who will Morgany rule in the mirror space? Rule the army of undead she summoned? Li Feng knew how bad this world was at using the alternate space. He remembered that in the film, Hafiz was imprisoned in the mirror world by Basto, and finally needed the help of his men to escape. So once Morgan entered the mirror space, she should just die in the alternate space. Speaking of this, Li Feng had to complain that Basto had let Hafiz go again. He had obviously imprisoned the other party in the Hungarian mirror trap, but he and David patted their butts and left. What is this? Li Feng thought this was called the depth of love. As for how to make Morgan's soul leave Veronica's body, Basto felt that the spirit out of the body gave him inspiration. The spirit out of the body is not just a simple active skill. In addition to actively casting spells to make its own spirit out of the body, it can also knock the other party's spirit out of the body. Didn't you see that the Ancient One almost made the physical body of Doctor Strange have a heart attack when he played with the spirit of Doctor Strange? As long as Basto did a little research, maybe he could knock Morgan's soul out of Veronica's body. After the deal was done, Basto simply carved another Merlin magic ring on the ground. Fortunately, the laboratory David found was large enough, otherwise he really couldn't carve 2 Merlin magic rings. Basto threw a pair of leather shoes to Li Feng and asked Li Feng to stay in the Merlin magic ring to listen to how he taught David. Before killing Morgan, Basto's teaching target was still mainly David. As for Li Feng, he just regarded him as an auditor who was not qualified to ask questions. But Li Feng had no objection. What could he do if he had an objection? Beat Basto? Li Feng had to beat him. In the film, David was able to release the ion cannon after just a few attempts, but it was not so simple in reality. It was not until a week later that David successfully cast a spell once. When David successfully used the vacuum ball to defend against the fireball, David said that he was already a magician and wanted to take Basto to eat something delicious and pick up girls by the way. Really, just pick up girls by the way. Li Feng said that he would stay in the laboratory and continue to compete with the fire summoning technique. I don't know if Li Feng really doesn't have the talent to practice magic or if his brain doesn't reach full power. Anyway, standing in Merlin's magic ring and wearing the magic gem to seriously learn the fire calling technique, he only succeeded in calling out a small flame within 1 meter, or the kind of small flame that a match is about to go out. Can the flame that takes a lot of effort to light a cigarette hurt people? Forget it. Chapter 7 Mana Attribute Bias. Li Feng secretly curled his lips when he heard the sound of the door back to the station being closed. He knew that David was going out this time to meet Betsy, whom he had secretly loved for many years, and to show off his excellence. As a result, when sending Betsy to the subway, she happened to encounter a robber who snatched Betsy's beloved bracelet. David, who felt that he was a magician, stepped forward and subdued the robber before chasing him far and took back the bracelet. When returning the bracelet to Betsy, David talked nonsense to Betsy and invited Betsy to come to the train station tomorrow to provide midterm review guidance to the little girl. I don't know what Betsy was thinking. Perhaps out of gratitude to David for helping her get the bracelet back, Betsy directly agreed to David's invitation. This made Li Feng somewhat unhappy. How could David succeed in picking up girls without revealing his identity as a magician? As for him, he had been single in the Marvel world for so many years and he didn't know whether the girl's hands were smooth or rough. What makes Li Feng even more unhappy is that Betsy is coming to the laboratory tomorrow. You have become an apprentice, but what about me? Not to mention releasing the vacuum ball, I didn't even see the shadow of the ion cannon. I was still working hard on the fire summoning technique and had to stop my magic practice for a day. Not to mention, I went to the train station to spread dog food. I considered this single person. Did Wang feel that way? Complaints are complaints. Li Feng was still practicing spells in the Merlin magic circle. After a while, Li Feng slapped himself on the forehead and muttered in annoyance, I am so stupid that I forgot all my advantages. After saying that, Li Feng sat cross-legged in the middle of the Merlin magic ring, because he suddenly thought of a way to quickly increase his magic power. What Li Feng didn't expect was that Barstow, in addition to going out to comfort his stomach that had been empty for 10 years, would also take advantage of David's time to pick up girls and get back some of his magic equipment from the mystery house, including the gifts he planned to give to Li Feng. Barstow and David returned to the station, carrying a few burgers for Li Feng for dinner. David looked at Li Feng in the Merlin ring speechlessly, turned to the surprised Barstow and said, Ding's desire for strength is almost overwhelming. Is this guy actually sleeping cross-legged in the Merlin demonic ring? Barstow rolled his eyes lazily to refute David's words. He was not a new apprentice like David and could not see Li Feng's spirit body. Barstow not only clearly saw Li Feng floating above the Merlin magic ring, but he could also feel the rapid growth of mana in Li Feng's body. However, it was Li Feng who used his spirit body to quickly increase his magic power, which allowed Barstow to see something abnormal in Li Feng's soul. He felt that it was necessary to have a good talk with Li Feng first, and was considering whether to give his gift to Li Feng. After Barstow asked David to study by himself, he walked outside Li Feng's Merlin magic ring and whispered to Li Feng's spirit body, "Austin, I need to talk to you." David was a little confused. "Brother, haven't you seen everyone sleeping? You can wake up a sleeping person by speaking so softly." Before David could remind Barstow, "You can't wake anyone up like this," Li Feng's spirit body had already returned to his physical body. He stood up and said to Barstow, "Okay, I just want to talk to you." "David, where are you sleeping as promised? Or maybe your sleep quality is too poor, I guess even mosquitoes flying around can wake you up." As Barstow walked towards the corner, he whispered to Li Feng behind him, "Although magicians are masters of energy manipulation, which allows us to release various types of spells, generally speaking, magicians have different abilities due to different energy attributes. The magic that I am good at. Li Feng can understand this, just like although Guyi has absorbed dark energy and uses dark energy as the source of her magic, she can still use spells that have nothing to do with darkness such as mirror space. Or like David, who played the Tesla coil in a musical style in front of Betsy. Although he is proficient in using fire summoning, the spell he is good at is still the ion cannon. This is related to his own talent, or David's mana attribute is electricity." Seeing that Li Feng understood what he meant, Barstow said seriously, "Just now when I saw your spirit body leaving the body to gather energy, I found that your mana attributes were a little biased." After hesitating for a moment, Barstow did not say the word darkness, but continued, "The time and space energy gathered by your spirit body is not bad. Although it is rare for ordinary magicians to have these two magic attributes at the same time, it is still possible. It's not a rare thing, but I found that your main attribute is related to soul and fire." Li Feng was stunned for a moment when he heard that his magic attributes had time and space, and then he thought that the so-called time energy was most likely the quantum energy of the Marvel world, and he had been contaminated by it when he traveled through time. "I feel tearing pain all over my body. Can I use less quantum energy?" As for the space energy, Li Feng thought silently, either it has something to do with the portal, or it has something to do with his soul traveling to the Marvel world. After all, the soul has no spatial attributes. How did I travel to the Marvel world and this world? The next fire attribute is relatively ordinary and not worthy of Li Feng's attention. Only the soul Li Feng wants to complain, maybe this is also related to my time travel, otherwise it would not be realistic to just have the space attribute. The soul is not spaced when traveling. Energy ground into slag. Considering that Barstow specifically called Li Feng aside to remind him of his soul, Li Feng understood that the magic attribute of his soul was probably not just a little bit, but occupied a dominant position in his own magic attribute. What profession does a magician who specializes in soul magic have? The first reaction in Li Feng's mind was the necromancer, etc. with the skeleton baby. What Li Feng didn't know was that the flame attribute that Barstow told him was actually biased towards the dark side. For example, normal flames only relied on combustion and temperature to hurt opponents, but once Li Feng deeply developed his own flame attributes, he would find that his flames were not directly burning the other person's soul as the flame that tortures the other person's soul. It's like hellfire, which can burn a person's soul without killing it, but makes the person feel the pain of having his soul roasted over and over on a grill. It can be said to be the best way to torture people when traveling at home. Seeing Li Feng's thoughtful face, Barstow knew that he didn't need to say anything more. As for the fact that the flames tended to be dark, he didn't want to say anything more. After all, he didn't want to teach Li Feng about the soul or the flames of hell. He just reminded him in a low voice, and the fate of mages who are related to the undead is not good. They played with souls and desecrated corpses during their lifetime, and they will definitely go to hell to receive punishment after death. As for whether there is hell in this world, Li Feng didn't bother to ask. In a world where magicians appear, do you still need to ask if there is a hell? Moreover, Morgan, who has always been a fan of the Sorcerer's Apprentice world, can summon spirits. How can she summon the undead to rule the world in a world without hell? As for the Marvel world, let's learn about Lady Death, one of the 5 creation gods. Li Feng, who was considering returning to the Marvel world to study the spell of summoning the undead, thought to himself, but the Lady of Death has jurisdiction over the entire universe, so she shouldn't pay attention to me, who is weak. I just don't know if I can return. It would be tragic if I couldn't return to the Marvel world. I won't say much about the Infinity Stones. But it would be so sad if my hope of returning home has become slim. As for now, Li Feng, who thinks he is still a rookie, dare not show interest in summoning skeleton babies in front of the just Basto. Without seeing Basto, he deliberately called Li Feng because his magic power is related to the soul. Go to the side and preach? As long as Li Feng shows interest in summoning spirits, who knows whether Barstow will directly kill Li Feng in case someone else in the world besides Morgan wants to summon the undead to rule the world. After confirming that Li Feng really had no love for spiritual summoning spells, Barstow patiently explained to Li Feng the dangers of dark energy and then took out a magic book the size of a matchbox from his pocket. He opened the magic book and glanced at Li Feng. The magic gem on his right hand said, "This is the magic book I got from Sun Long when I was imprisoning him. Now I give it to you as a teaching material." Before Li Feng could take the magic book with a smile on his face, Basto pressed the magic book and said, "But Sun Long has recorded a lot of black magic information in this book, so..." Having said this, Barstow tapped the magic book lightly and said with a smile, "Now I will clear out the information about black magic and replace it with the spells about fire. I hope you will like it." "I like it, I really like it." Of course, judging from the fact that the fireball technique can be successfully used by molecular vibration in the hands of a mage, if you record the nuclear fusion principle of the sun's glow and heat in this magic book, I will like it even more. What can't be burned by fusion fireball? I get excited just thinking about it. Unfortunately, after Li Feng opened the book and read it for a long time, he realized that he had thought too much. Except for the fireball technique, which was based on the violent vibration of molecules, the remaining spells were either flame rain or fire wall. The only spell that caught people's eyes was the introduction of the flight principle that caused the air to burn and expand, and then let the air jet out from a certain nozzle. In this regard, Li Feng felt a little disappointed. The principle of using flame combustion to complete jet flight has been recorded, but I dare not fly. My neck can't stand such a huge propulsion and the jet engine is such a high-tech principle. It's all recorded, how could you not record the fireball technique of nuclear fusion? Are you discriminating against nuclear fusion or are you worried that I can't understand it? Although I really can't understand it, can't I learn it? People are easy to learn, okay? By the way, there is also your magic gem." Barstow pointed to Li Feng's right hand and said, "Give me the magic gem and I will help you forge it into a ring, saving you the trouble of holding the magic gem when casting spells." Li Feng handed the magic gem to Barstow without thinking, bowed and said, "Thank you very much." At the same time, he also expressed his extreme gratitude to Sun Long in his heart. The magic gem was snatched by Li Feng from Sun Long, and the magic book was obtained by Barstow from Sun Long. Now these all belong to Li Feng. If he doesn't express his gratitude, he would be very sorry for this good compatriot who specializes in sending equipment. Bar. The next day, Li Feng, who had been staying in the Merlin demonic ring and using his spirit body to gather mana, heard the doorbell ringing as he returned to the station. He understood that today's practice had to stop, but just when Li Feng's spirit body returned to his physical body, the tearing sound, "The pain in my body," came again. Chapter 8 Return. When David heard the doorbell, he suddenly remembered that he had not yet told Barstow and Li Feng about his invitation to Betsy last night. Regarding being able to be alone with the goddess he has secretly loved for a long time, David tactfully told Barstow and Li Feng, "If you don't want to eat dog food, please leave politely." Barstow wanted to talk to David about Hoffa's coming to kill at any time, how tense the current situation was, etc., but Li Feng was already pulling Barstow with a pale face and was about to leave. Compared to Barstow and David, Betsy was the first to notice the heavy cold sweat on Li Feng's face. She pointed at Li Feng and signaled to Barstow and David whether they should take Li Feng to the hospital first. Barstow glanced at the pale Li Feng and understood that the time energy in Li Feng's body was rioting again. Considering that Betsy was just an ordinary person and in order to hide the world of magicians, Barstow glared at David and supported Li Feng. He hurried out and returned to the station. David also wanted to care about Li Feng, but he just thought that Li Feng would not be in any danger with Barstow's care. On the other hand, he could show off his own sense of excellence by being alone with Betsy. After thinking for a tenth of a second, David chose to be alone with Betsy. As soon as Li Feng and Barstow walked out of the station, Barstow helped Li Feng calm down the time energy with a confused look on his face and said, "This is impossible. I have helped you calm down the time energy before." Perhaps thinking of something, Barstow said in a bad tone after Li Feng's face returned to normal, "You studied time in private after David and I left last night? Maybe I misjudged you. This kind of pain of being torn apart by energy, maybe you should endure it for a while, so that you can understand that the wizarding world is full of dangers." After regaining his composure, Li Feng put his hands on his knees, gasping for air while smiling bitterly, wondering if he should tell the other person that he was not from this world. It's better to explain it to Barstow. Maybe the other party's knowledge reserve can help me return to the Marvel world. After thinking for a moment, Li Feng rubbed his forehead, which was still a little painful, and whispered, "This is not time energy, but quantum energy." Barstow was stunned, and suddenly thought that the scientific name quantum might be time in magic, but quantum is not the same as time, but related to time, and it was exactly as before that made him feel so calm. Time energy will riot again, because the root cause has not been found, and no matter how he casts the right spell, it will be ineffective. Otherwise, if his majestic level 777 magician cannot soothe a little time energy, where would he put his face? Stretching out his hand, Barstow motioned for Li Feng to continue. He was very curious. After getting along with each other for a few days, it turned out that Li Feng, who was both a scumbag and a mysterious person, had a relationship with the quantum realm. "Don't tell me that you are still scientists in the quantum field, I'm afraid my belly will burst out from laughter." Of course, Li Feng is not a scientist. It is enough to say that he just stays at home. When Li Feng scratched his head and told that he was not from this world, Barstow didn't believe it at first, and then thought that Li Feng's 3 unique spells did not belong to this world, and Barstow stretched out his right hand to release the portal in the open space, and said, "You can come to my world because of it." It has to be said that a level 777 mage is nothing but a fool. It only took Barstow a few days to successfully release the portal. Li Feng glanced at what looked like a parking lot on the other side of the teleportation gate, nodded and said, "Yes, this teleportation technology can indeed boast world teleportation in theory, but it has clear requirements for the caster." Barstow said without thinking, "You need to know where you want to go. Remember the place you want to go in detail in your mind. The more detailed you are, the faster you can cast the spell. On the contrary, you are not sure whether you are going to a place or a place that does not exist. The spell will fail." It is also this basic requirement for spellcasting that allows mages who have never left the Marvel world to use portals in their native world, instead of freely traveling through other worlds. Otherwise, Ancient One's subordinates should not call them mystics, but directly call them travelers. Forget it, mage. And the entire Comitage will not be supported only by the Ancient One. Think about how many ways to make mages powerful in other worlds. If the temple mages can freely enter and exit those worlds, haha, what's the matter with Domomu in the Marvel world? A random mage who had reached the peak of his cultivation in another world and then went home to relax would have pressed Dormammu to the ground and rubbed it. As for the purple sweet potato essence, do you want to be a sheep grazing on the ground, or a fat pig raised in a pig pen? Maybe turn into a panda and be watched by people? After all, it is a national treasure that has no worries about food and clothing. Compared with the sheep and pigs that are accidentally slaughtered and brought to the table, the national treasure is of a much higher grade. Barstow was still a little confused. With the portal to another world, he thought he still couldn't go to another world. Squinting, Barstow stared at Li Feng and thought, so the quantum energy that Li Feng specifically mentioned before is most likely also a necessary part of time travel. Thinking of this, Barstow walked to Li Feng's body and pressed his right hand on Li Feng's forehead to feel the quantum energy. After a while, Barstow, who understood something from it, looked at Li Feng in surprise. Looks like Barstow found something. With a little anxiety, Li Feng asked carefully, "Can I return to the original world?" Barstow answered Li Feng's question with certainty. He was concerned about another thing. The quantum realm is actually related to time travel, and I can feel that the time in Austin's body is not the connection between quantum energy and the Earth. The long river of time is connected, and coupled with the characteristics of the portal, the other party can appear on the Earth in various time and space. But this obviously means that I can't travel to another world. First of all, how to let quantum energy exist in my body without killing me is a problem. I can only say that everyone has his own destiny. With a little envy, Basto told Li Feng what he had discovered. Li Feng felt that he had a headache. It's understandable to use quantum energy to travel through time. After all, it was mentioned in Women's Federation 4, but it's a bit confusing that the quantum energy in my body is related to the Earth. I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing. This is a good thing, Barstow explained quietly, letting Li Feng understand how much benefit he had gained after the explosion of the quantum channel. To explain using Li Feng's idea, there are countless tributaries in the Great River of Time, one of which branches off from the source point of the Earth to countless Earths. The quantum energy in Li Feng's body allows him to connect with this source of time that starts from the Earth. Online relationships. After a long time, Li Feng licked his excited lips and said, "So as long as there is a world with Earth, I can rely on quantum energy to travel through it." Barstow rolled his eyes, pointed at the portal and said, "This thing requires energy to cast a spell. I can only say that you can rely on quantum energy to reach various worlds, but whether you can land in that world depends on whether that world has the corresponding the energy allows you to open the portal." After thinking about it for a while, Li Feng understood what Barstow meant and said, "In other words, although I can't reach an Earth with pure technological development, I can land on those Earths with magical power." Bastel nodded with envy. It's hard not to be envious. Will there be fewer parallel Earths with mysterious side powers? Obviously a lot, especially those worlds with mythical creatures. Not to mention the powerful spells that can kill gods and demons, the formula of medicinal materials that makes oneself powerful is worth his saliva. Unfortunately, he can't go, at least not yet. Feeling re-energized with fighting spirit and igniting the idea of continuing to become stronger, Barstow thought. Maybe I can't go to other worlds now, but as long as I continue to practice, sooner or later I will be able to travel to other worlds. But before that I want to confirm one thing. Basto glanced at Li Feng, who was grinning so much that he was drooling. He wordlessly took out a handkerchief from his pocket and said, "Wipe your drool first. I'm going to tell you how to return to your original world, and." With a look of contempt that even a blind man could see on his face, Barstow continued, "You are a typical example of someone who was thrown into another world in disgrace. The prerequisite for being embarrassed is that you have to have face." As for Li Feng, he said that his face has been in his pocket for a long time and it is impossible to lose it. Li Feng took a deep breath and let it out slowly. This was also the advantage of long-term meditation. After just a few seconds, Li Feng focused his mental energy and signaled that Barstow could teach him how to open the door and go home. Barstow touched his chin and said, "Now you try to calm down the time quantum energy and see if you can return to your original world." Li Feng scratched his eyebrows, spread his hands and said, "There's no need to try, I know I can't go back, because I tried before, and there was only a ball of swirling orange energy, and the complete portal couldn't appear." It seems that part of my understanding is right. Barstow didn't feel sad or disappointed that Li Feng secretly tried to start his way home. If he was inexplicably transported to other worlds, he would also try to find a way to go home. Basto stretched out his hand to cause the calmed quantum energy in Li Feng's body to fluctuate again, and said, "Since you relied on the River of Time to successfully travel, you must rely on the help of the River of Time if you want to go home, so you need to combine the quantum energy with the portal. Only by uniting can you hope to return home." As soon as he finished speaking, Li Feng felt the pain of his body being torn apart by energy, but this time he said nothing and endured the pain of his body being ground to release the portal to the open space in the distance. Not to mention, the portal that appeared this time was really blue and white, and it had previous speculations about the time tributaries. The careful Li Feng clearly found that in the blue and white light curtain, a slender green light representing time was constantly twisting. When the portal appeared, Li Feng only felt a suction coming from the portal, but before Li Feng could steady his steps, the portal suddenly rushed towards Li Feng. "What's going on? I don't want to walk into the blue and white light curtain, so you naughty portal just swallowed me up? Everyone needs to be reasonable, you know, even though I want to leave, I can't express my gratitude and say goodbye to Barstow. You don't give me this little time. You're stingy." Although Basto was a little surprised by the naughty behavior of the portal, he didn't say much. He just silently tightened his fists. "After Morgan is resolved, I will resume my life as a hidden cultivator. Sooner or later, we will meet again in Austin." Chapter 9 Invitation. In the Marvel world, the temple mages have always been famous for secretly guarding the earth from invasion by magic from other planes. For this reason, they have also built a protection and monitoring network on the earth. Unfortunately, Li Feng, who had just squeezed out of the rubber pipe, had returned from another world. Therefore, he had both magical creatures and invasions from other planes. If the temple mages were not discovered in this way, it would be a dereliction of duty for the mages. In addition, Li Feng used unfamiliar quantum energy to travel through time, which was undoubtedly as bright as a lighthouse in the dark for Guyi, who was extremely sensitive to the power of time. It was difficult for her to pretend to be blind. So just as Master Daniel, who was guarding the New York temple, was about to sound the alarm and summon people, Guyi, who was in the Himalayas, appeared beside him in an instant and said, "Daniel, don't worry. No hurry." Daniel turned his head and glanced at the mages behind him. He felt that Guyi stopped him because the invaders who appeared this time were powerful or numerous. There were fewer mages gathered now. Guyi was afraid that these disciples would suffer unnecessary losses. After all, it was still difficult to train mages. Not everyone is as talented as Doctor Strange, and can become stronger after being beaten by Dormammu countless times. Ordinary mages may die completely after being beaten by Dormammu several times because their spirits cannot bear the blows. When Daniel was about to ask whether to recruit more people, Ancient One smiled and said, "This time it is not an invasion, but a guy who went out for a trip and came home." Daniel was a little confused and muttered, "Going out for a trip?" Then Daniel thought of something, looked at the magic equipment that was still sounding the alarm, turned his head and looked at Ancient One blankly and said, "Supreme Sorcerer, do you mean someone went to another world to travel? And now he is back?" Ancient One nodded and said, "The portal used by this little guy is still learned from us, so if you really want to talk about it, he has a certain origin with us." Daniel was a little confused. Although he knew that the portal could travel across worlds, he really had never seen anyone who could travel to other worlds except the mirror space attached to reality. By the way, whose disciple is this, so awesome? He was still protecting his native world from invasion by outsiders, while someone on the other side was playing with the portal and going to other worlds. To be honest, Daniel actually wanted to meet this guy who could travel around the world. It would be best if he could exchange some portal spells. Who knows when he would have time to travel to other worlds and broaden his horizons. This is much more interesting than I measured the earth with my feet. I have measured other worlds, can you? However, Daniel glanced at Ancient One. He understood that since this guy had returned from another world and alarmed the Supreme Mage, it meant that Ancient One was going to deal with this matter himself, and it basically had nothing to do with him. Perhaps seeing Daniel's disappointment, Ancient One smiled and said, "Come with me to meet this little guy. You know him too?" "I know him." Daniel's eyes were a little confused. He searched his memory but couldn't think of any mage he knew who could travel through planes, until he remembered the address where he had seen the alarm before. Chinatown Li Feng. How capable is Li Feng? Daniel would go to check it out in person whenever there is a mana alarm in Chinatown on the monitoring network. In addition to caring about the descendants of his old friend Li Feng from afar, he also wants to see how Li Feng is practicing magic now. It can be said that Daniel has seen every growth of Li Feng in the past 2 years. Could it be that Li Feng can still hide his strength under his nose? Seeing Guyi nod to confirm that the traveling guy is Li Feng, Daniel's mouth twitched and thought, "Is this a bit ridiculous or am I so old and blind?" Guyi raised his eyebrows and stretched out his hand to open a portal. To be honest, if she hadn't noticed the time fluctuations emitted by Li Feng when he teleported, she wouldn't have noticed Li Feng. It can only be said that Li Feng was very lucky and didn't let Guyi use the Eye of Agamotto to check his past. Otherwise, just because Li Feng's spirit appeared as a greasy uncle 2 years ago, Guyi would have pinched his neck and asked him the question of "Where are you from and where are you going?" Li Feng, who had just returned to his room, had no time to check if there were any changes in the messy room. He was naked and kneeling on one knee vomiting, and he had already noticed the fluctuation of mana caused by the portal behind him. Resisting the desire to continue vomiting, Li Feng looked at Guyi, who appeared with a bright bald head, with twitching eyes. In the future, Daniel would come to peek at him from time to time behind Guyi. Li Feng put on a fake smile, covered his crotch with both hands and carefully moved to the closet. While putting on clothes, he whispered, "Boss, can you say hello first when you come next time? At least make a phone call or send an email. You see my house is messy, it's really not suitable to entertain you." Gu Yi put his hands behind his back and looked Li Feng up and down with interest, which made Li Feng have an illusion that he was a doll placed on the goods shelf, allowing the buyer Gu Yi to check the quality of the goods at will. As for whether Li Feng was naked, Gu Yi said that she had seen too much in her life, and she didn't mind looking at a naked man for another second. Besides, just by looking at Li Feng's small belly, Gu Yi knew that Li Feng was not her type. Since he was someone else's dish, what was wrong with Gu Yi taking a look? Anyway, Gu Yi didn't think she was at a disadvantage. When Li Feng hurriedly put on his clothes, Gu Yi had almost seen everything she should have seen, and the only thing left was for Li Feng to show up and confirm her guess. When Li Feng put on his clothes, Daniel asked anxiously, "Li Feng, how did you complete the journey to other worlds?" "Well, you have explained why you didn't spy on me from a distance this time." Li Feng scratched his brows, picked up the magic book that Basto gave him from the ground and said, "Why don't you introduce yourself first and get straight to the point?" Gu Yi looked at Li Feng's small single room and said with a smile, "Didn't you call me the boss? Is it necessary to introduce myself?" And Gu Yi pointed to the monitoring screen that had become dark because no one was at home for a long time, and said, "I think you are not unfamiliar with the Daniel wizard who monitors you." Daniel hadn't noticed the monitoring screen at first. After all, no one would notice that there was a dark TV screen in the shabby room. When Gu Yi specifically pointed out that this was a monitor, he realized that what he thought he had secretly observed before. I'm afraid Li Feng had already noticed it, which made him a little embarrassed. It was agreed to observe secretly, but the other party knew that there was such a person as himself. "What kind of secret is this?" "I know about your existence from my grandfather's notes." For some reason, Li Feng always felt that he needed to explain, otherwise the big boss Gu Yi would play with the time gem for nothing, and look at his past, all his details would be leaked. Gu Yi nodded in approval of Li Feng's explanation. It was not just that Li Feng's grandfather would record her identity in his private notes. As long as he was a disciple who had been in the temple, he would write a few words about her figure in the notes. Moreover, her iconic big bald head also made those mages who had never seen her recognize her identity at a glance. After all, there are really not many women who can do magic and shave their heads. Because traveling back to the Marvel world requires quantum energy riots, Li Feng, who has not been able to automatically calm down the riot energy, needs to take a deep breath to relieve the pain in his body, but fortunately Gu Yi saw Li Feng's severe pain and cast a spell to calm the quantum energy. Feeling much better, Li Feng immediately said to Gu Yi respectfully, "Thank you." Gu Yi shook his head, indicating that you are welcome, but Daniel on the side could not help but ask again, "We came here this time to ask how you completed the plane crossing." Li Feng scratched his head, looked at the messy room caused by going to the Basto world, and the room full of dust because he didn't know how long he had been in the other world. While thinking about whether he should change his living environment, he told Gu Yi and Daniel about the principle of crossing that Basto told him. Unlike Daniel who did not understand the quantum field, Gu Yi understood it. To put it bluntly, crossing can only be done by Li Feng himself. This is like the seemingly calm and peaceful long river of time, but it actually hides a huge crisis. If you are not careful, you will be dragged into the river and drowned. The quantum energy when Li Feng crossed was different from the time diversion caused by using the time gem to cross time and space. The quantum energy in Li Feng's body is more like a ship that protects him, allowing him to drift on the long river of time, and the portal is the port for landing. Of course, just like what was said before, Li Feng can only go to the world where magic exists. The ship and the port must also match in order for Li Feng to get off the ship. Otherwise, if you try to park a raft at a port where an aircraft carrier is docked, or if an aircraft carrier is docked at a port dedicated to kayaks, either the raft is destroyed and cannot get ashore, or the aircraft carrier is stranded. But not everyone can sit on this ship. At present, except for Li Feng who caused a similar boat to recognize the owner due to an accident, no one can get on this magical time ship. Gu Yi also understood that as long as Li Feng remembered the location of these ports, he could freely travel back and forth between multiple worlds. But it is obvious that Li Feng's power is not enough for him to remember these ports, so Gu Yi knew that Li Feng could only board the ship from the Marvel world for the time being, drift aimlessly to the next port, and then rely on the boat that remembers the coordinates of the Marvel world to send Li Feng back to the Marvel world. After Gu Yi's answer, Daniel said that he did not understand these principles, but also understood that cross-dimensional travel was basically out of his reach. He waved his hand in frustration and said that he needed to go back to the New York temple to be quiet. Gu Yi invited Li Feng, hoping that Li Feng could come to Camartage when he had time, and hoped to borrow Sun Long's magic book from Li Feng. In exchange, Gu Yi said that she could teach Li Feng magic in person for a while. What could Li Feng say about this? Of course, he asked Gu Yi to wait. Li Feng called the landlord as quickly as possible to say that he was very happy to rent in Chinatown, but he found a new place and said that he would not continue to rent it. After carrying a few changes of clothes, he passed through Gu Yi's portal to Camartage. Li Feng has already made plans for the future, which is to keep going to the magic world to learn, hoping to collect the infinite gems and go home before Thanos, or simply snatch the infinite gems from Thanos when he is strong enough. Of course, the latter is just a luxury. It is estimated that when Li Feng's strength can beat Thanos, he can take the initiative to open the door to go home without the infinite gems. Chapter 1010 Ancient One and Number 039, S Teachings and Practice. Gu Yi expressed her understanding of Li Feng's attitude of not being nostalgic for Chinatown, because she saw that Li Feng was ready to make a big move on the road of magic. Places like Chinatown are obviously not suitable for practicing magic. It is easy to be disturbed, and once the magic energy leaks, it will also be a trouble. Not to mention the distant ones, the shield alone is enough to bother Li Feng. Oh, sorry, shield has not changed its name yet, and it is still called the Strategic Defense Attack and Logistics Support Bureau. When she came to Camartage with Gu Yi did not start teaching Li Feng directly. After all, she also saw that Li Feng, who had just traveled back, needed to rest. She ordered Mordo to arrange a room for Li Feng to rest. Gu Yi walked into the hall holding the magic book that Li Feng had not had time to read, and read it with relish. Mordo is a stubborn person. In the original book, he chose to leave because he knew that Gu Yi was secretly absorbing dark energy, and killed a large number of mages to maintain the balance of nature. Therefore, Li Feng did not have the idea of approaching him except for superficial politeness. Besides, Li Feng knew his future path. Since his magic power was inclined to the dark side, it would inevitably conflict with Mordo. Rather than being unable to explain it later, it was better to keep a distance from Mordo now. No words were spoken that night. After a night's rest, Li Feng was full of energy and came to Gu Yi's reception room under Mordo's guidance. Gu Yi had already prepared tea to entertain Li Feng. Although Gu Yi said that making tea by himself was a basic operation, Li Feng still felt a little flattered. This was tea made by a big man standing at the top of the earth. Can ordinary people drink it? After Li Feng tasted the tea carefully, Gu Yi handed the magic book to Li Feng and said, "Very interesting spells and books, but because of the different worlds, there are a lot of incompleteness. I'm afraid you need to spend time to record it yourself." Different worlds and incompleteness? Li Feng didn't understand it a little, because he had taken a few glances at this magic book at the beginning and didn't find any incompleteness. Gu Yi stretched out her hand and motioned Li Feng to open it himself, and he understood what she meant. With a hint of doubt, Li Feng flipped through the magic book. After a while, the corners of Li Feng's eyes kept twitching, expressing his speechlessness and helplessness. Originally, the magic book could automatically record everything that happened in the magic world, but the world connected to this magic book was obviously the world of Basto, and it was a little uncomfortable in the Marvel world. First of all, the knowledge about magic history and art disappeared inexplicably. Li Feng didn't care about these things, so it was no big deal if they disappeared. But some potion formulas and alchemy formulas that didn't have corresponding materials in the Marvel world also disappeared. It can't be said that the formula disappeared, but the corresponding material names disappeared. But Li Feng still said that he couldn't stand it. "What do you call this?" "The potion that can enhance mental power originally requires 10 materials, but because the relevant medicinal materials are not in the Marvel world, you leave me 5 material names and 5 blank brackets? Is this asking me to find a way to add the name of the medicinal material in the brackets or something?" The only good news is that the various spells left by Basto in the magic book still exist. In addition to proving that these spells are still effective in the Marvel world, it also proves from the side that Li Feng can learn these spells as long as he works hard, including the time acceleration and slowing spells that Gu Yi envied. But now that I am in Camartage, of course I have to learn to forge a wizard robe first, otherwise I have to land naked in other planes after each time I cross over. After many crossovers, either I can't pick up my face anymore, or I simply don't have any shame. While Li Feng kept complaining in his heart that he didn't wear clothes when he crossed over, he folded 2 A4-sized magic books into the size of a matchbox and put them in his pocket, sitting cross-legged opposite Gu Yi, looking like he was waiting for his instruction. Gu Yi is indeed an experienced worker who has been engaged in education for many years. As soon as Li Feng raised some doubts, Gu Yi answered them in a way that Li Feng could understand now. The only regret is that although Camartage can also forge magic weapons by itself, Gu Yi said that there is information on how to forge a magic dress, but the specific operation is obviously not something that Li Feng, a rookie, can do. As for the magic robes and other clothes that were woven before, Li Feng said that he couldn't afford them even if Gu Yi gave him a friendly price. He is not a rich man. In addition, he didn't find a job to practice magic. He just did odd jobs to earn some pocket money. In addition, he bought some equipment for physical exercise before. Now Li Feng has less than $10,000 in his pocket. Camartage is Gu Yi's territory after all. It's okay for Li Feng to live there for a while. I believe Gu Yi won't say much, but Li Feng can't treat Camartage as his own home for the time being. Besides, his mana attribute problem is easily affected by the prejudice of this group of righteous wizards. If they want to have an activity to eliminate evil demons, does Li Feng want to be beaten to death or strangled to death by Mordo? So he has already thought about how to spend the remaining $10,000, such as buying a second-hand RV, a large tent and some outdoor living supplies, traveling aimlessly and traveling to other worlds to continue traveling. It is estimated that this $10,000 is not enough for him to spend, so where can he get the spare money to buy a magic robe? In the question and answer, time quietly came to noon. Li Feng stood up and bowed to Gu Yi to express his gratitude. Gu Yi smiled and nodded, reminding, to use time and portals to travel, you need to try many times and grasp the degree, otherwise you will find that you only went out for one day, and when you return to this world, you find that a year has passed. Li Feng was also helpless about the unequal timelines of the two worlds. It was like he had only stayed in the world of the Sorcerer's Apprentice for less than half a month, but when he returned to the Marvel world and looked at the time, well, it was already the same time. It's been many months. This is just one of the worlds. If one day he goes to the world where Ancient One said that one day is equal to 1 year in Marvel, it will be over. When he returns from other worlds, he finds that all the purple sweet potato spirits have finished snapping their fingers and destroyed infinity gems, and the heroes exchanged all the gems for them. Where did he go to cry? If you want to know something about traveling through time, you have to face the Eye of Agamotto in Kamatage, but Gu Yi doesn't agree with that thing even if he wants to lend it to Li Feng to study other mages. How could an outsider gain Gu Yi's affection? Is there any adultery involved? How do you want Li Feng to answer? Said that Ancient One likes men with small bellies? Li Feng could be drowned in the spit of the mages without Gu Yi taking action. Fortunately, there are many worlds where time is studied. For example, in the Harry Potter world, which is basically safe as long as you don't seek death, Hermione uses time-related props because she signed up for all the courses. It's a pity that Li Feng knows very well that he doesn't know what world he will appear in after traveling through time. If he still can't log into Harry's world, he will only be blind. In the afternoon, we were still in the living room, but this time it was Li Feng who showed off the Merlin magic ring in front of Gu Yi and performed a performance of the spirit body rising out of the body and increasing his magic power in the Merlin magic ring. To be honest, Li Feng was still a little worried about showing off his spiritual body in front of the big boss Gu Yi. What if Gu Yi saw something and killed him casually? Is it possible to explain the abnormality in his spirit body due to quantum energy? Fortunately, Gu Yi didn't notice any abnormality in Li Feng's spirit body. She only felt that Li Feng thought that his mastery of the magic of his spirit body was not perfect, which made him feel a little nervous. Relax, Gu Yi said with a smile, casting a spell is a delicate operation. You can't be too nervous. Just like the more nervous you are in a battle, the easier it will be for spell casting to fail. On the contrary, it is more helpful to cast a spell with a normal mind. Li Feng smiled slightly, but felt relieved in his heart. At least she didn't notice anything unusual about Gu Yi's spirit body from his tone and expression. Taking a deep breath, Li Feng gently closed his eyes and gathered energy in the Merlin magic ring. Gu Yi's familiarity with dark energy was not comparable to that of Li Feng. He could see the attributes of Li Feng's magic power at a glance, and sighed slightly in his heart. Miao Ziai, a mage who can travel to other worlds, has magic power that is biased toward darkness. Fortunately, this is his talent. As long as you keep your mentality unchanged, you can be like normal people. You don't need to be wary of the corrosion of dark energy like me. It's just that this kid obviously can't stay in Kamatage for long. Fortunately, I got in touch with him today. I hope that he, who has unlimited potential, can take care of Kamataj when he grows up. Thinking of the future Ancient One, he subconsciously looked out the window. There was a man in apprentice clothes with blank eyes who was practicing hard. His name was Cassilis, and he was also the grindstone that Ancient One had prepared for Stephen Strange. Knife stone. At this moment, Gu Yi was a little hesitant. Li Feng didn't know how far his boat could travel, but Gu Yi relied on years of research experience to see that as long as Li Feng was willing, magical creatures could be brought on his boat. Travel together. This is not just props like hanging rings and magic books, it also includes creatures with magic power. Unfortunately, mages are also classified as creatures with magic power. Compared to Doctor Strange, who grew up after being tortured and killed by Dormammu, a supreme mage who goes to other worlds to open his eyes will obviously be stronger, and as long as Li Feng has a good grasp of the timeline, he may be able to grow Stephen after being stronger than her. She faced Dormammu's invasion. When Stephen beats Dormammu to pieces, it will be very exciting. Unfortunately, my time does not allow me to see that scene. Forget it, since everything has been planned, it's better not to break the original plan. As for Li Feng, just use it as an accident insurance. Thinking of this, Gu Yi interrupted Li Feng who was gathering his magic power, and explained some mistakes made by Li Feng when his spirit body left the body. Li Feng humbly asked for advice and recorded these experiences in the magic book. These are the places that Gu Yi personally pointed out. As long as he understands these, the time for Li Feng's spirit body to leave the body can be increased several times, and by the way, Li Feng will have more knowledge. Time allows the spirit body to stay in Merlin's magic ring to increase its magic power. In the next few days, Li Feng learned the mirror space spell from Gu Yi. Although he is still not able to release the mirror space with a wave of his hand as gracefully as Gu Yi, he feels that he has made great progress. At least he can successfully release the mirror space after some gestures. Which is equivalent to having an undisturbed place to practice spells for him who is preparing to travel. Chapter 11 Leaving. Kamataj Library. Li Feng smiled and handed the small note from Ancient One to the unfriendly librarian. Although knowledge can be shared in Kamartaj, and mages are allowed to borrow books in the library at any time, it also depends on who is borrowing. First of all, ordinary people are definitely not allowed to borrow, and secondly, foreign mages like Li Feng. These are the knowledge that the mages of Kamartaj have worked hard to collect. Why should they lend them to outsiders for free? They are very careful when reading books themselves for fear of damaging them. So it is conceivable how bad the attitude of this librarian is towards Li Feng, and some of the small notes from Ancient One to Li Feng are the private collections of Master Ancient One, which makes the administrator even more unhappy. Li Feng doesn't care whether this familiar administrator is happy or not. As long as he can borrow the books he wants to read, he doesn't care if he is unhappy. Besides, what can Li Feng do if he is unhappy now? Not to mention whether he can beat the administrator. Even if he can beat him, he can't escape from Kamartaj. There are mages who can open portals outside. Where can he run? Moreover, Li Feng remembered that this administrator would be chopped on the head by Cassilis with a double axe in the end. At least he would record this little displeasure first. When this guy rests in the cemetery, Li Feng would dance a friction, this is the devil's step on his grave. Taking the book from the administrator's reluctant eyes, Li Feng went straight back to his room, and while holding the magic book with his hand, he translated the temple's mage book with a translation tool and read it aloud in a low voice. Li Feng did not have the ability of Basto to record the knowledge in the magic book with just a touch of his hand, so he could only use the most traditional method to record, that is, he read aloud here, and the magic book automatically recorded the collected sounds in text. Of course, this also has some small troubles, such as the need for a quiet environment, otherwise it will appear when reading aloud on the road, and there will be a car horn sound every few lines in the content recorded in the magic book. Similarly, this also requires Li Feng to read aloud with standard pronunciation, otherwise there will be typos. After the recording is completed, Li Feng also needs to check the recorded content, because the magic book said that it is only responsible for recording, and it is not responsible for typos and polyphones. Fortunately, correcting typos is much more convenient than copying the entire book with a pen, otherwise Li Feng would not wear Kamartaj for a month, but for years. Among these copied books, the most valuable is Gu Yi's private collection. Basically, these books that Gu Yi allowed to borrow from Li Feng are more or less related to time. This is related to the spells that Basto left in the magic book to explain the flow of time in detail. Although these spells only control the flow of time, unlike the Eye of Agamotto, which can turn back time, they are still a great inspiration for Guyi. At least after finishing these spells, Guyi said that after more than a month of research, she can control the flow of time on certain items without using the Eye of Agamotto, such as making a green apple mature quickly, or slowing down the maturity of apples, so that it will not mature for 10,000 years after hanging on the tree. Although these spells have not been applied to living creatures, this is also a remarkable progress. In time, Guyi said that he would be able to achieve the records in the magic book in the future. Not only would he use time spells on living creatures, but he would not disturb the seemingly peaceful time. Originally, Guyi should thank Basto, but it was obviously impossible for Guyi to go to the other world and thank Basto in person, so these thank you gifts naturally became Li Feng's collection. After a month of copying and recording books, Li Feng finally recorded all the books on basic spell casting in Camartage. On this day, Guyi found Li Feng, who was about to pack his luggage, and said, "It looks like you are ready to leave." Li Feng was a little embarrassed. During this time in Camartage, he was not counted as Guyi's private teaching. He also ate and drank for free and got many benefits for free. He paid only a magic book with a small number of spells, and this magic book is still lying quietly in his backpack. It would be strange if he was not embarrassed. Li Feng scratched his head and said, "What do you want to talk to me about?" Guyi nodded, waved his hand to set up a mirror space and said, "I am very interested in how you travel through time, so I want to see how you travel through time before you leave." Guyi's request was not difficult. After thinking for half a second, Li Feng put his luggage on the ground neatly, and took off some sundries on his body and said, "Master, I don't know how long time will pass in this world after I travel back. I am afraid that some of the dry food I prepared will expire, so can you prepare some dry food for me after I come back? It's not that I can't bear to spend this little money, but..." Li Feng, who was stripped down to a pair of boxer shorts, had a small belly and said with a hint of embarrassment, "But I really don't have much money." Looking at Li Feng, who was wearing a hanging ring on his left hand and a ring inlaid with a huge red magic gem on his right hand, holding a magic book in both hands, and ready to travel through time, Guyi smiled and nodded. Her Camartage family was big and powerful, so let alone preparing some dry food for Li Feng, even preparing enough dry food for Li Feng to eat for a lifetime would be no problem. Everything was ready. Li Feng took a deep breath and closed his eyes to activate the quantum energy in his body. When his body began to feel tearing pain, Li Feng opened his eyes seriously, stretched out his left hand, and drew circles quickly with his right hand. A blue-white portal with a hint of green light hidden in it appeared in front of Guyi. Before Guyi could take a closer look, the portal of light instantly pounced on Li Feng and swallowed him up. As the portal disappeared, only the boxer shorts Li Feng was wearing were left on the ground. It proves that Li Feng has traveled to other worlds. Guyi clasped his hands behind his back and carefully felt the remaining time travel energy in the air. After a while, Guyi looked at the calm and unfazed Guyi with a hint of envy. It is really a magical time travel with countless worlds behind it, so what if he has poor qualifications? If I could have had this kind of adventure back then, I wouldn't have risked absorbing dark energy. After waving his hand, Guyi stepped through the portal and walked out of the mirror space. However, before Guyi could walk out of Li Feng's room, she suddenly noticed something strange behind her. Guyi turned around and saw a naked and unshaven Li Feng spit out from a blue-white light curtain. So fast? Guyi's mind was filled with questions, thinking, Li Feng couldn't have just traveled back in time and immediately returned, right? The beard on his face didn't look like he hadn't shaved in a few days, at least it hadn't been shaved in a month, right? Rubbing his dizzy temples, Li Feng calmed down the violent quantum energy in his body, took out his coat from his luggage and put it on, and said, "Master, you won't come to my room every day during this period and wait for me to come back from time travel." Bar. Guyi shook his head slightly and said, "Since you traveled through time, you came back before I could leave your room." Li Feng was stunned, then hesitated and said, "You mean I stayed in another world for half a year, and only a few seconds passed in the home world?" "Half a year?" Gu nodded and looked at Li Feng with a smile, and said, "It seems that you have worked very hard in the past 6 months. At least the mana in your body has increased a lot. If you don't feel tired, can you tell me what you have been to, world?" Although Li Feng has not shaved for a while, he looks a little worn out, but he is not mentally exhausted. After all, his mental power has improved a lot now. However, Li Feng is a little helpless with this improvement, because the world he is going to has a lot of magic power. It was not high, which forced him to focus on improving his mental power to achieve more precise control of spells, thereby saving mana consumption when casting spells. After scratching his head, Li Feng sat down on the bed and said, "You know, I can only go to a world with earth, and a world with mysterious side powers. It's the same this time." As Li Feng slowly spoke, Gu Yi understood that Li Feng had gone to an earth where the timeline was just after the American Civil War. At that time, a soldier named Jonah Harks was dissatisfied with his boss General Turnbull's order to massacre the hospital. He shot and killed his boss's son and then retired. However, the general was not easy to mess with, so he took his younger brother directly to find him. Hux takes revenge, and after tying up Hux, he lets him watch his family being burned alive. The story begins here. Hux, who was tied up and waiting to die, was saved by a group of Crow Indians when he was dying. He gained the ability to communicate with the dead under the treatment of a witch doctor. Li Feng didn't care how Hux sought revenge from Turnbull. He was only interested in the ability to communicate with the dead, so he learned the information about the Crow clan from Hux and inquired about it until he found the Crow clan a few months later and learned how to deal with it. Dead people communicate. In fact, in Li Feng's view, the technique of communicating with the dead is more like a variant of using it with spirits. Just like when Hux communicates with the dead, he needs to touch his hand to the deceased, so that the soul of the deceased can be projected back from the underworld to the body in front of him, and this projection is a variant use of some kind of spirit body. It is also because ordinary people cannot see spirits, so in the eyes of Hux, these dead people will revert to the appearance of living people, but in the eyes of others, Hux is just a lunatic talking to a rotting corpse. As for the remaining medical methods of the Crow clan, Li Feng only took a look at them and then stayed away from them and prepared to learn them. Look at how these witch doctors treat people. They first give themselves some poison to make them dizzy, and then they give treatment. Li Feng's eyelids jumped when he saw it. "Brother, are you saving others or are you preparing to enjoy yourself?" As for whether the person being treated can survive, in the words of the witch doctor, they have no after-sales service. It is their credit for saving the life, but not the life? If you have the ability to come out of the ground and bite him, what can Li Feng, a witch doctor like Ma Dan, do after he returns to the Marvel world? Dance master? So after Li Feng learned how to communicate with the dead, he returned directly to the Marvel world. The only thing that surprised him was the time gap between the two worlds. Guangong warms wine and kills Hua-Xiong, but he warms wine and travels to another world. After talking about the accident, although Gu Yi suggested that Li Feng rest for a day, Li Feng still chose to leave. After sorting out his personal hygiene, Li Feng went straight back to New York from the portal of Comitage. In addition to preparing to buy a second-hand RV, Li Feng made plans for the future in his heart in the other world, such as buying some playing cards and making them into magic props. Use during the transitional period. Chapter 12 Ancient One and Number 039, S Warning. Before leaving, Gu Yi specially called Li Feng, who was carrying a shoulder bag, to the living room for final reminders. Waving his hand to open the mirror space, Gu Yi walked into the mirror space with his hands behind his back. Li Feng hesitated for a moment. He was a little confused as to what Gu Yi wanted to do. When Li Feng walked into the mirror space, Gu Yi asked with a smile, "Austin, do you know what attribute your magic power prefers?" Li Feng breathed a sigh of relief in his heart. At first, he was confused about why Gu Yi taught in a place with first-class confidentiality like the mirror space. "It makes my little liver jump all over the place. It is really inconvenient to talk about dark magic in a group of righteous magicians like Comitage." If Li Feng is dying after being overheard, it is estimated that the only idea of the group of magicians is to kill Li Feng on the spot while Gu Yi is not paying attention. The provincial Li Feng grew up and became a disaster. It turned out that the reason why he came to talk to me was because he discovered that my magic power is biased toward the dark side, but that's the case. Basto can tell at a glance that my magic power is biased towards the dark side. It's strange that Gu Yi, a guy who has also been alive for many years, can't see it. Li Feng nodded slightly to show that he knew about this, and at the same time motioned for Gu Yi to continue speaking. In fact, Gu Yi's warning to Li Feng was nothing. Barstow also warned Li Feng at the beginning, but Barstow meant that Li Feng should not come into contact with dark energy, and directly concealed the fact that Li Feng's flame attribute was also biased toward darkness. Gu Yi's attitude towards dark energy is much more interesting. He not only tells Li Feng that the attribute of fire is also biased toward darkness, but also tells Li Feng how to adapt to dark energy and control them instead of being corrupted by dark energy. Li Feng thought the same thing. The big boss in front of him had an understanding of dark energy that ordinary people could not match. Gu Yi not only used dark energy, he was also a strong man who firmly resisted the temptation and corrosion of darkness. He would treat those who use dark magic. His attitude will obviously be much better, and Li Feng's magic power is naturally biased toward darkness. No one can change this, not even Gu Yi. Of course, Gu Yi would not say anything to Li Feng that she was stupid for using dark energy. It is said that knowing people and knowing faces but not knowing the heart, who knows what Li Feng will do after knowing her little secret. The Ancient One didn't want Kamatage to be divided. In this regard, the Ancient One just vaguely taught Li Feng some of his own experience in resisting dark energy. For example, he used the story of human ancestors to evolve from a single cell into a fish and then into a human being to warn Li Feng about what it means to be ready and not to be ready. Too hasty. Human mages are like fish living in fresh water, and the air in the water is like the magic power that mages rely on to survive. Those mages who do not seek advancement are like living in freshwater lakes, and spend their entire lives like this. As for those mages who are ambitious, those with shallow qualifications rely on their magic power to become amphibians and occasionally go ashore for a look, or those with outstanding qualifications evolve lungs. Breathe oxygen directly and completely land on the vast land. But there is also a difference in evolution, just like fresh water and seawater is like dark energy. Although carp can adapt to most environments, you can throw a carp into the sea and try to salt it to death by dividing it into pieces and become a salted fish. The mana of Li Feng, a freshwater carp, is biased toward darkness, and he is destined to only enter the ocean. Of course, the carp named Li Feng is not strong enough at the moment. If he can't think of entering the ocean directly, the only way is to be corroded by the sea water and die. What Gu Yi wants to express is to first make Li Feng stronger, and then find an inlet to adapt to the seawater environment to survive for a period of time, and then enter the vast sea after his magic power evolves to adapt to the saltiness of the seawater. When talking about the entrance to the sea, Li Feng noticed a trace of unnaturalness and hidden sadness on Gu Yi's face. Li Feng resisted the urge to scratch his brow, lest Gu Yi find out that he was complaining about Gu Yi's use of dark energy. Li Feng understood that Ancient Yi had overestimated his qualifications at the beginning, so he failed to find a suitable entrance to the sea and directly connected to the sea of the boss Dormammu. As a result, the sea water was too salty and Ancient Yi was corroded by dark energy. If Gu Yi didn't really have two brushes, the position of Supreme Mage would have been replaced by someone by now. However, the Ancient One could not resist the corrosion of dark energy for long. Dr. Strange received the lunchbox after appearing on the scene. While Li Feng felt sorry for Gu Yi, he said respectfully, "Don't worry, Master, I have countless worlds on my back. As long as you are careful, your potential will be endless. There is no need to take risks for the sake of strength." Clenching his fist, Li Feng said impassionedly, "Taking shortcuts will definitely lead to self-destruction. Only by taking one step at a time on the Mage's Road can you reach the top." "I understand." The corner of Gu's eye twitched slightly. These words seemed to imply that I was taking a shortcut by absorbing dark energy. Even in the sea on Earth, there are still some places that are salty. This is like a dangerous area hidden in the dark energy. Even if you can only swim in the sea in the future, you still need to be careful at all times. Li Feng nodded with a serious face to express that he understood this and he would proceed carefully on the road of magic. What needs to be said has been said. As for whether Li Feng is taking it one step at a time as he said, Gu Yi is not Li Feng's mother. Why does he care so much? Saying this has made Li Feng have a good impression of Kamatage. This is enough. It can be seen that the ancient couple's thoughts on the future development of Kamatage have been broken to pieces, and they can't even fight to get it back. After opening the portal and saying goodbye to Gu Dao, Li Feng borrowed Kamatage's portal to come to the New York Temple. After chatting with Daniel for a while and walking out of the New York Temple, Li Feng looked back at the temple. For some reason, Li Feng always felt that Gu Yi was as worried about his attitude towards him as he was towards his son. Shrugging his shoulders, Li Feng said to himself, "Whatever, whether it's an illusion or he really treats me as his son, it will make Gu Yi's eyes widen if he collects any good things in the future. If Gu Yi likes my collection, I will give it to her. A few won't hurt. By the way, where did the guy I contacted earlier who was selling second-hand RVs come from?" Li Feng patted his forehead and said to himself, "It seems to be in Louisiana?" The biggest city there is called New Orleans. Li Feng licked his lips and wondered if there were chicken drumsticks in New Orleans. He walked to the deserted corner and prepared to practice the portal while rushing to Louisiana. As soon as Li Feng walked into an uninhabited alley, he found a Harley-Davidson motorcycle parked behind him, and two young men in black and white, wearing earrings, riveted leather jackets and punk style, got out of the car and had overdosed on marijuana. People combination. To talk about the biggest feature of the United States, we have to mention that there are many robbers. Compared with being a thief, which requires certain skills, robbery is obviously simpler. You only need to show your muscles to intimidate. The more difficult ones are also just pull out the dagger and make a few gestures, and the top ones will probably use a pistol to rob. By the way, when a thief is caught in prison in the United States, he will be looked down upon by his fellow inmates. This will make the prison bullies in the same prison feel embarrassed. For historical reasons, they prefer to show off their muscles rather than their skills. Of course, if you sneak into the central bank is a different matter. It is no longer an ordinary technical job, but a talent. Li Feng didn't need to ask anything to understand that he was being robbed, and the target of the robbery was naturally him, who was strutting through the market carrying a shoulder bag. Does maiden carrying a single-room bag mean that I am rich? Although there is indeed money in my bag, it is my only property. I give you everything I need to eat and drink. By the way, this is the first time I have been robbed? Counting from the time I came to this world, within 2 years, as long as I went out at night, I would be robbed 1/5 of the time. This kind of law and order is chaotic. But this is the first time I have been robbed during the day. It is a rare experience. I hope I will give you a good review after I rob you. He glanced at the shoulder bag behind him to prevent it from falling during the fight, and then looked up to see if there were any cameras nearby. Li Feng said with a slightly raised corner of his mouth, "Two black and white brothers, how about we discuss it? You guys give me the money, I won't slap your handsome face." Among the robbers, the black guy felt that he was being underestimated. He reached out and pulled out the dagger from his waist and said with a fierce look on his face, "Yellow-skinned monkey, do you know who you are talking to?" Li Feng raised his eyebrows, spread his hands and said, "Talk to a descendant of a slave who was captured by the Portuguese and brought to the United States and has only white teeth." Obviously, Li Feng was very unhappy with the black man's title of yellow-skinned monkey. The black man was stunned. He didn't know what the relationship between the Portuguese and him was, but he clearly understood the word slave. He waved the dagger in his hand at Li Feng a few times in the air, as if it could send out invisible sword energy to hurt Li Feng, expressing his expression. His anger at the moment. The white guy behind the black man obviously knew that among the first batch of European colonists to arrive in Africa, the Portuguese were the first to trade black slaves. Seeing that his companions didn't even know their own history, he couldn't help but let out a puff and laugh. It's just that the white people also knew that they were still engaged in robbery. This was not the right time to talk about the history of black brothers. They held back their laughter and took out the dagger and looked at Li Feng's shoulder bag, and then at the huge ruby on Li Feng's right index finger. Actually it was magic gem, thinking, "It's such a big gem, I don't know if it's real or fake, I'll grab it first and then throw away the fake one, if it's really a luxury car, a beautiful woman with everything you want." The white man looked greedy and said in a vicious voice, "Be honest and throw the ring and bag on your hand to us, or I will use the cutie in my hand to measure how deep your anus is. Just say a few words and let me give you the magic props? Do you think you are the strongest Naruto?" Li Feng glanced at the charming sound of the Harley motorcycle engine behind the two of them. Although Li Feng didn't know much about motorcycles, he also knew that the suspected modified Prince model motorcycle in front of him was worth a lot of money. "Anyway, I can't afford it." Li Feng ignored the small dagger in the hands of the black and white combination, and thought tangledly, "Now, should I choose to practice the portal spell? How about riding this cool motorcycle to Louisiana?" The inexplicable laughter of the white brother and Li Feng's ignorance made the black man a little irritated, and he shouted ferociously, "Yellow-skinned monkey, where are you looking?" The black man's voice made Li Feng look at the two of them, with a strong look of unkindness in his eyes. "First it was a question of address, and now it makes me fall into difficulty in choosing syndrome. See if I'm easy to bully or what, I'll let you know how to provoke a mage. The consequences, even if I am just an apprentice who can rub fireballs now." Chapter 13 Captain Marvel? Hello, goodbye. Faced with two robbers who would fall down at the slightest sign of wind, Li Feng was too lazy to even rub his fireballs, and used his fists to make the two black and white duo who had overdosed on marijuana lie on the ground and doubt their lives. Watching Li Feng riding their motorcycles away, the two looked at the empty wallets on the ground in the distance, which belonged to them. They had agreed to rob others, but they were not only knocked down by the other party with 3 punches and 2 kicks, but also robbed of the only $50 they had. That was fine, but what did the other party mean by the contemptuous look and calling them poor before leaving? Do robbers have no face? The black man rubbed his bruised cheeks and looked at the white man who was also beaten into a pig head, and asked, "What should we do now? Should we call the police?" The white man, "Call the police? What are you going to say to the police, uncle? Say that the guy we wanted to rob not only beat us into pig heads, but also robbed us of our only money and the motorcycle we just stole? By the way, is my buddy stupid, and can he even forget his own family history? Or did he drop out of school before he even finished kindergarten and became a gangster?" The white man patted his butt and stood up, not even looking at the black man with a question mark on his face. He had decided to go it alone, otherwise, my black buddy will kill me sooner or later. On the other side, Li Feng rode the stolen motorcycle all the way to Louisiana, and bought a few boxes of playing cards when he passed a convenience store. Until night fell, Li Feng casually abandoned the motorcycle without oil on the side of the road and went straight into the bushes not far from the road. It is cool to ride a motorcycle, but this thing was stolen. What if the black and white brothers called the police? Li Feng is determined to become a great magician. How can he throw away the opportunity to practice the portal for the sake of being cool? Anyway, Li Feng will not admit that he feels sorry for the gas money. Besides, is it just a matter of gas money? Don't you know that Harley motorcycles are also a big gas guzzler? After finding a wide and relatively clean place in the sparsely growing bushes, Li Feng used the fire calling spell to light a bonfire, took out some magic materials from his shoulder bag, and opened a box of beautifully packaged playing cards. After spending half a year in Jonah Hax's world, Li Feng has become proficient in rolling out fireballs, but for Li Feng, whose mana is still scarce, the fireball spell is not suitable for fighting. First of all, the power. In addition to being able to ignite furry creatures such as cats and dogs, it is still a bit difficult to ignite a living person. At most, it will burn people. If the person hit by the fireball takes off the burning coat quickly, there may not even be a burn. Secondly, the flying speed of the fireball is too slow, which is about the same as the firing speed of a children's toy gun. People with more agility can easily avoid it, making Li Feng waste his limited mana in vain. Finally, the casting speed. Li Feng can't do instant fireball spells at present. Could it be that Li Feng still expects his opponent to stand there stupidly and wait for him to complete the spell, and then stupidly not dodge and wait for the fireball to hit his face? If he really meets such a stupid opponent, Li Feng can just stab him with a knife and solve the problem. Why bother to make a fireball? So in order to have long-range attack power at present, Li Feng can only choose to make spellcasting props in addition to purchasing guns. Unfortunately, Li Feng feels that guns are not suitable for the identity of a magician, and guns are not magic props. They are not allowed to be taken to another world when traveling. In addition, Li Feng took some magic materials for nothing when he lived in Camartage, so he naturally forgot the choice of guns. As for choosing playing cards as magic carriers, Li Feng is also helpless. Originally, throwing knives are more suitable as spellcasting props, but Li Feng believes that it is still difficult to ignite the throwing knives at present. In addition, which item do you think is more likely to attract the police, whether you carry a throwing knife or a playing card? How to explain to the police when going through security? And how many throwing knives can you bring? What about playing cards? The fact that it can catch fire easily and the police won't bother with it is not to mention that it is light and thin. Even if you put a box in each pocket, outsiders can't easily find it. A box of playing cards has 54 cards, and 2 boxes have more than 100 cards. Who can carry more than 100 throwing knives? The weight of the throwing knives alone is enough to make the user drink a pot, not to mention flexible fighting. Midnight. Li Feng admired the freshly baked playing cards with runes engraved on the front and Merlin's magic ring on the back, and secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Glancing at the few remaining magic materials, Li Feng's eyes twitched as he clamped the playing cards between his fingertips and looked at them repeatedly, muttering at the corner of his mouth, "It's not easy. I wasted most of the materials to successfully make 20 magic playing cards containing fireballs. I don't know how powerful it is, don't let me down, this is a prop I conceived for half a year." Thinking of this, Li Feng turned his head with a little excitement to look for the target. There were nothing but stones in the wilderness. Li Feng could only pretend that the stones in the distance were enemies. He took a deep breath and waved his hand to shoot the poker cards in his hand. As the poker cards hit the stones under the control of mental power, a fireball suddenly exploded. Li Feng nodded with satisfaction. The shooting speed is about the same as that of a crossbow arrow, but the crossbow arrow flies in a straight line, and the poker cards do not fly in a straight line. This has an arc flight trajectory, which makes it difficult for the target to avoid the attack of the poker cards in advance. Unfortunately, my mental power control range is only 10 meters, so the enemy can only be within 10 meters around me before I can make the poker cards hit the target accurately, but it is only for now. As long as I keep practicing, I can achieve 100 meters and 1000 meters sooner or later. Sitting back by the campfire, Li Feng carefully understood the mana consumption required to shoot playing cards. After a while, Li Feng grinned and said to himself, "Not bad, it only consumes 1/3 of the mana of the fireball spell, but the power is but it's bigger than the fireball technique I released." Li Feng turned his head and looked at the cracked rocks that were roasted by the fireball. Li Feng, who was unwilling to admit that he was an idiot for releasing the fireball technique by himself, muttered and added, "Just a little bigger, just a little bit." In the early morning, Li Feng, who was meditating cross-legged, opened his eyes, got up and jogged on the road to exercise. Half an hour later, his hands and feet were fully mobile, and Li Feng, who was slightly sweating, took out a pack of compressed biscuits from his backpack and ate it with gusto. The beef-flavored compressed dry food is so delicious that Li Feng said he could eat 10 packs at a time. But when he thought about the price, Li Feng felt distressed after eating 2 packs and said he had a stomachache and couldn't eat any more. A few days later, Li Feng, who had a tired face, finally arrived in Louisiana. Not to mention, after practicing through the portal, Li Feng no longer had to pose for a long time before opening the portal. Although he was not as free and easy as Gu Yi, he could not it was used in battle, but Li Feng thought that it would be okay to give him a few seconds to cast the spell and escape. Passing by the backyard of a second-hand RV seller, Li Feng glanced at a private small plane parked in the backyard. When he walked to the main entrance, he saw a sci-fi aircraft parked on the roadside in the distance. He muttered, "The one in the backyard is nice." Explanation: it's probably for spraying pesticides, but what the hell is that one on the roadside for? With an envious look in his eyes, Li Feng knocked on the door and thought, they are really a wealthy family. No wonder an 80% new RV is sold so cheaply. It's not in vain that I came all the way from New York to get the bargain. At this time, a beautiful woman wearing white short sleeves opened the door. Li Feng stretched out his hand to shake hands and said with a smile, "Hello, is this Maria Rambo? I'm Austin. We were on the phone before. Talked about." Before Li Feng could finish his words, he was grabbed by the neck and pulled into the room by the short-sleeved beauty's shining red right hand. Li Feng, who was confused, subconsciously prepared to resist, but a huge energy came from the short-sleeved beauty's red glowing right hand, which instantly caused Li Feng's mana to become confused and he lost the ability to resist. Li Feng, who was pulled into the room, was still wondering when he had offended this extraordinary beauty, when he heard the other party sneer, "Taros, next time make it clear that homeless people on planet C-53 are not polite." Knock on the door. Glancing at Li Feng's flip-flops, the beauty raised her eyebrows and said, "Tell me more, your slippers are very tasteful." At this time, Li Feng's attention was neither on the beauty pinching his neck nor on admiring the beauty's figure, but on the black man behind the beauty. Li Feng knew this black man. Although this guy was neither one-eyed nor bald, Li Feng still recognized him at a glance as the famous Agent Fury, the African chief who would sit on the throne of S.H.I.E.L.D. director in the future. "Maiden, I just traveled thousands of miles to buy a second-hand RV. How about being so unlucky as to meet a braised egg who is suspicious of everything?" Looking at Fei Rui who still had hair, Li Feng, who felt that he couldn't call Fei Rui a braised egg at the moment, curled his lips and thought, "Sorry, your bald braised egg image is too deeply rooted in the hearts of the people. So please forgive me for ignoring your short hair that is still alive." Hearing the beauty call him, Li Feng blinked innocently and looked at the beauty and said, "Wait, I'm not Talos, I'm just here to buy a second-hand car." The name of Talos shouted by the other party, plus the red light from Fury's and the beauty's hands holding his neck, Li Feng already knew who this beauty was, Carol Danvers, also known as Captain Marvel. Li Feng felt that he was a little wronged. He wanted to say to Carol, who was looking at him with a puzzled look, "Hello, Captain Marvel, I found the wrong address. Goodbye. Maiden, if you are so unlucky, you can meet Fury when you buy a car, and I brought it to you myself. Although in my future plans, I have plans to be noticed by S.H.I.E.L.D. because I want to get close to the Infinity Stones, but this is definitely not me when I was weak now. I want you to pay attention to me when I am strong and have a certain right to speak. Hey? By the way, isn't there an Infinity Stone on the Kree cruiser that the Skrull Commander Talos is looking for? Should I take the opportunity to seize it? Before Li Feng could finish thinking about how to get close to the Kree cruiser, he suddenly felt the hairs on his body standing on end. Li Feng lowered his head and looked in the direction that gave him a sense of danger. He saw a cute cat sniffing his toes and wandering around. The cat's eyes gave Li Feng the illusion that it was looking at the food, which made him swallow his saliva and shudder. In his heart, Li Feng, who was about to cry without tears, just felt that he was going to be cold today. He forgot that there was a food eater. Yuan Beast. Chapter 14 Bad Luck. As a senior agent, Fury judged that Li Feng knew him when he subconsciously looked at him. Li Feng had been spending the past few days in the wilderness and had no time or tools to clean up his personal hygiene. As a result, his unkempt face covered half of his ordinary face. Fury was a little puzzled. He thought that even if Li Feng didn't have these old beards, he would still be able to recognize him if he had seen him before. Fury, who has an excellent memory, can guarantee that he has never seen the Asian young man in front of him wearing hole-in-the-wall jeans, dragging slippers and showing his trademark belly. It's impossible for my memory to be faulty. An agent's memory is faulty. What a joke. Fury would never admit that his judgment was wrong. He was very sure that the guy who called himself Austin was very familiar with him, just like the other person had carefully observed him in secret and could recognize him even if he turned into ashes. Kind of familiar. Frowning, Fury thought, the confidentiality level of his identity is not low. Why can the other party recognize him at a glance? Could it be that a spy hidden in the bureau revealed it to the other party? What is the identity of the other party, who does he work for, and what is the purpose of coming here? For a moment, the names of several forces floated through Fury's mind. He glanced at Carol and Li Feng, who was being strangled by Carol. Fury secretly thought, ordinary people would be scared and panicked when their necks were strangled. Waiting for emotions, but this person knew that Carol's hand was glowing red, but there was no fearful expression on his face. Instead, he always felt that the word bad luck was written on the other person's face. Perhaps the other party's goal is to get close to the amnesiac Carol? The hidden bugs in the bureau spread the news quickly enough, and then they decided to target this lady who had returned from the alien and had extraordinary fighting power. Before Fury could finish his thoughts, Maria Rambo, a black woman on the side, said that she had never seen an alien that could turn into an earthling, and she did not believe that there were aliens in this world that could transform. He reached out apologetically to break away Carol's hand, and said to Li Feng, "Sorry, Mr. Austin, you also saw that there is something wrong with my family. We will talk about the RV another day. On the price, I still making concessions." After saying that, Maria said to Carol helplessly, "Let him go, he is just an ordinary person who came to talk to me about trading RVs." After hearing Maria's explanation, Li Feng nodded desperately and said, "Madam, I'm just an ordinary person passing by. Let me go and I will disappear in front of your eyes." Carol didn't believe that Li Feng was an ordinary person. The reason why she dared to let her hands glow red as if burning in front of Li Feng was because she sensed the energy that came out of Li Feng's body when he wanted to resist her. Can ordinary people have energy in their bodies? Lying to children. However, Carol let go, because she was sure that the Skrulls did not have this kind of weird energy in their bodies, so she judged that Li Feng was more of a transcendent living on the earth. As for whether letting go of Li Feng would affect her producing a threat by himself, Carol said that he could easily strangle the other person's neck once, and he could easily strangle the other person to death countless times. Seeing that Carol finally released her grip on his neck, Li Feng breathed a sigh of relief. While rubbing his throat, he heard another knock on the door. With Carol's experience of pinching people into the room, Maria would never let Carol open the door again. If this bratty girl pinched a neighbor, how could she get along with her neighbors in the future? Get along? Unfortunately, Carol's strength was not comparable to Maria's. She was pulled directly behind her by Carol. With a look of helplessness, Maria could only stand behind Carol, thinking about what to do after opening the door. Explain to the guests outside the door. Fury glanced at Li Feng thoughtfully and hid behind the door with his pistol raised. Li Feng didn't care whether the person outside the door was called Tom or Jerry, or whether Tom was Maria's neighbor. He just wanted to leave as soon as possible, because he knew that the Skrulls would appear in the house soon, and he wanted to exit by then. Fury would not allow it. After all, it was about the existence of aliens. How could an ordinary person know about it? What if Li Feng was talking nonsense everywhere? But Li Feng didn't expect that Fury had already concluded from his reaction that he was someone sent by some force to get close to Carol, and he was destined not to let Li Feng leave easily. Before Li Feng could take a step, Fury pointed his pistol at Li Feng and shook his finger at Li Feng, signaling Li Feng not to act rashly, otherwise he would shoot. Li Feng, who felt unable to dodge the bullet, looked at Maria with an unlucky look and explained a few words to the neighbor before closing the door. "Maiden, it's time to finish." Sure enough. The faint voice of Skrull Commander Talos came from behind Li Feng. "You should be more friendly to your neighbors. You may need to borrow money from them one day." Before Talos finished speaking, he stared blankly at Li Feng, who had his back turned to him. The Skrulls are a shape-shifting race. They can copy anyone's genes and change their appearance. At the same time, they gain the short-term memory of the other person when copying their genes. However, Talos clearly realized that he could not copy Li Feng's genes, let alone know the other person's genes. Memory. Is this still the Earthling I learned about? Not to mention the tough woman who was able to defeat 20 of my soldiers with her hands tied. Why did a guy with unknown abilities appear again? Talos decided to take a sip of the milk tea in his hand to calm down his shock. "Maiden, this guy is definitely not from Earth. I just want to find my family to reunite with. Isn't this road so difficult? Even if a pervert with superior combat power appears, it's special. Do aliens appear?" As for being pointed at by Fury with a pistol, Talos said that this is not a problem. He has backup as insurance, such as... Maria was a little confused when she saw the green alien, and then saw Talos's backhand through the window, a Skrull who turned into herself and talked to her daughter. After Maria finished saying in surprise, "What's going on?" Talos, who had recovered his senses, turned to look at Li Feng and said, "As long as you don't kill me, she will be safe." Li Feng rolled his eyes and expressed helplessness that he could not leave at this time. He knew that Talos came here with sincerity to convince Carol to reveal the coordinates of his family, so for now there would be no conflict between the two parties. As for Fury pointing his gun at Talos to show that he was angry about the fact that Talos became his boss, Li Feng didn't bother to care. He walked aside and poured himself a glass of boiled water. These days, he was eating compressed dry food and drinking the water is extracted from the air with mana, but using mana to collect water is not an easy task for Li Feng now, so Li Feng can tolerate thirst as long as he can, and when he can't stand it, he gathers some water and takes a sip. Now but I was very thirsty. After drinking the water, Li Feng sat aside and prepared to listen to the story. "Anyway, it is idle, but there is no popcorn to eat. Bad review." Li Feng, who had just sat down, felt a sense of danger coming from his feet again. He was so frightened that he hurriedly took a few steps back. At the same time, Talos was also frightened by the cat-like element-devouring beast named Gugu. Rose took a step back in fright. Seeing that Talos was actually afraid of a cat, Carol picked up Gugu and approached Talos, jokingly saying, "Cat? You're not afraid of this cat, are you? This is interesting." Carol can understand that the guy who calls himself Austin is afraid of cats. After all, some people are allergic to cats, but the dignified Skrull commander is actually afraid of a cat? Who would believe it? Talos stepped back with a horrified look on his face and said, "This is not a cat, but an element-devouring beast." Element-devouring beast. Fury felt that this was the biggest joke in the world. When did domestic cats on Earth become ferocious beasts in the universe? Do dogs on Earth have more domineering names? What about those lions and tigers that can easily kill cats in seconds? Could it be that in the eyes of aliens, it is a sky-devouring beast? It can be said that everyone present except Li Feng thought this was a joke. What could Li Feng say about this? Are you saying this is really an element-devouring beast? Who believes it? And with Fury's character, he is ready to get to the bottom of Li Feng now. How should Fury explain when he sees the element-devouring beast showing its true face? I imprisoned Li Feng, pinched his neck and asked, "Tell me, which planet are you an alien from?" After all, only aliens know what an element-devouring beast is, right? However, Talos obviously wanted to drag Li Feng into the water. He pointed at Li Feng and said, "Look, he knows this is not a cat. Maiden, I'm just a theater goer. Li Feng rubbed his headache, picked up a water glass and drank water to hide the embarrassment on his face and said he didn't know anything. Putting down the water glass, Li Feng said quietly, well, I have an urgent need to urinate, can I? Before Li Feng finished speaking, he was interrupted by Fury, I also want to let go. I'll go with you. Touching the pistol that gave Fury a sense of security, he looked at Li Feng doubtfully, this guy is by no means simple. He looked calm when seeing aliens. Either he knew about the existence of outsiders, or he is also an alien. I've seen people eating and drinking together, but it's really rare to see two men having sex together. Rolling his eyes at Fury, Li Feng shrugged and said, you're not afraid that I'll run away. If you want to follow me, just tell me. What excuse can I make? Even if I spread the news about seeing aliens, some people must believe it. Fury looked at Li Feng with a sarcastic look on his face, with an expression of I just want to let loose, that's all. In his heart, I don't care if others believe there are aliens on Earth, I just want to know who you are. When Li Feng and Fury returned to the living room, they saw everyone staying in the study and staring at the computer screen with sad faces. Li Feng understood that this was the computer loading the black box of Carol's original Lightspeed engine fighter, but currently on the Earth the download speed of the computer was so slow that Talos had the urge to smash the computer. Fury didn't want Li Feng to know too much and wanted Li Feng to stay in the living room, but this way he would not be unable to hear the contents of the black box. At this moment, Fury wished he had a subordinate beside him who could help him look after Li Feng. There was no other way, Fury could only let Li Feng walk into the study and comforted himself, since the other party knows about aliens, it's not bad to know a little more. Chapter 15 Red Carp, Green Carp and Donkey. After a long time, Li Feng's computer in the study, which seemed to be an antique, was finally loaded. Talos, who was standing aside, also breathed a sigh of relief. He was really afraid that even loading this broken computer would make his legs numb when he stood. This isn't it a waste of my time? Don't you know how much I miss my family now? On the side, Carol listened blankly to the voice recording on the computer, and images of him piloting a fighter plane and being chased by alien fighters when he was carrying out the Pegasus project kept flooding in his mind. When Carol understood the source of her extraordinary power, and whether she had been deceived by the Kree's supreme leader in the past 6 years or that the recordings in the black box were all forged, she ran out of the room in panic and confusion, all her thoughts were in her mind. It's the question mark of who I am and where I am. Maria was worried that her friend couldn't bear the blow and ran out, ready to comfort the confused Carol. Also following Carol was Talos, who didn't want to miss the opportunity to reunite with his family. Only Li Feng and Fury were left in the room. After taking a sip of water, Fury touched the pistol and asked, you said your name was Austin. Li Feng spread his hands and said, should I praise your memory? You still remember my name after so long. God, it took you so long. It's less than half an hour. Just based on your current attitude, I want to lock you up until you die of old age. Fury touched the pistol and prepared to draw it to scare Li Feng. Li Feng was helpless when he saw this. He was not sure whether the future African chief would actually shoot him. Although I'm always prepared with a magic shield so I'm not afraid of your broken guns, it's better not to expose my abilities as much as possible. Wouldn't it be nice to let me watch the scene of Captain Marvel fighting aliens with peace of mind? If that doesn't work, why don't you just treat me like a melon-eating audience? Scratching his eyebrows, Li Feng looked at the pistol pointed at him, shrugged helplessly and said, okay, my name is Austin, what are your orders? Fury didn't care whether Li Feng was implying that he was an old fool. He only cared about whether the other party spoke under the threat of a pistol. As long as he mastered the rhythm of the conversation, as a senior agent, he could always find some clues from the clues. Just Austin? Where's your full name? He only knew the name Austin and his unshaven face. Although Fury was confident that he could find some information about the other party, it would take a lot of time to investigate. You must know that there are not as many street surveillances as there will be in the future. It really depends on Fairy to investigate slowly. I am afraid that the information found will be out of date for who knows how long. Li Feng, who was sitting on the chair with his back leaning against the chair, crossed his legs, looked sideways and thought for a moment, and said, want to know more? It's very simple. You just need to learn to speak a sentence with me and make sure to pronounce it clearly. You ask me how old I am before I wet the bed and I'll tell you. Fury frowned. He wouldn't be afraid if he simply learned to speak. After all, he was a multilingual person, and he could understand even Chinese. After thinking about it, Fury nodded and agreed to Li Feng's request. Before he thought about it, he wanted to hear what Li Feng wanted him to learn to say before thinking about other things. He still didn't believe it. It was just learning to speak, how difficult it would be. He stretched out his hand and made a gesture of invitation, and then Fury Yui heard Li Feng say with a confused face, "The red carp family has a little green donkey named Li Quitu, and the green carp family has a little red donkey named Lu Lily." The red carp family said his family's Li Chiwidu is greener than green carp's family's Lu Lily. Green carp says that his family's Lu Lily is redder than red carp's family's Li Chiwidu. I don't know if it's because the green carp is redder than the red carp, or the red carp is redder than the green carp. Donkey green. After speaking, Li Feng stretched out his right hand to Fury, raised a finger and said, "As long as you say the above sentence quickly and clearly, you can ask any questions." Fury was a little confused. He recognized that this was a Chinese tongue twister, but he, a foreigner, was learning how to do tongue twisters. Even if his tongue was pulled out and straightened on the spot, he still wouldn't be able to say the complete tongue twister. With an evil look in his eyes, Fury slightly raised the muzzle of his gun and aimed it at Li Feng's head. Li Feng ignored the pistol in front of him with a calm expression. "Do you think the energy gun in your hand can penetrate my magic shield? Save it, you're not the bad guy in Captain Marvel. His majestic energy directly suppresses my magic. What about you? Just rely on this toy gun?" However, Li Feng also knew that he had made Fury anxious. What if the agent sent someone to follow him all day long? With a curl of his lips, Li Feng said with a disdainful tone, "You don't know how to do something so simple. Are you trying to learn the tongue twisters that a 3-year-old kid can say? 3 years? I have the feeling that you are 4 years old." Fury put down his pistol, his lips twitching when he heard Li Feng's Chinese tongue twisters. "Red carp is as good as green carp as donkey. Maiden, is this a tongue twister that your 3-year-old knows?" Looking at Fury's resentful little eyes, Li Feng felt so happy in his heart. It felt better than drinking ice-cold Coke with the air conditioner blowing in the summer. He finally got revenge for studying English for 2 years, or revenge for being the director of SHIELD. Go up, feel good. Thinking back to the time when he had to study English in Chinatown, Li Feng felt dizzy and weak. Let me learn English. It also allows you to learn a foreign language, and it is also the most difficult language to learn, Chinese. Thinking about the profound Chinese language, let's take the word I. Men can use yet, women can use Laoniang, the emperor can use Zhen, the queen can use Ijia, young people can use Xiaosheng, monks can use Pinseng, and Taoists can use Pindao. Rough people use us, literati use Xiok, officials use Benguin, common people use I'm, old people use Lofu, those who are above are called subordinates, and those who are below are called me. Look at your poor English, you only use one I to describe yourself." Li Feng smiled and pushed away the muzzle of the gun that Fury had pointed at his forehead because of his rage, signaling Fury to be careful with the gun in his hand, and not to waste bullets by accidentally firing it, and said, "Want to know all my secrets? Go and learn Chinese slowly." Li Feng stood up and looked out the window, and said mysteriously, "Believe me, we will meet again in the future, and now is not the time to know who I am." Fury was a little unhappy, but he couldn't do anything about Li Feng. The alien could become his colleague and boss. He didn't know who he could trust at this time. He could only think about investigating the other party's identity after this matter was over. As for detaining Li Feng, Fury just thought about it. First of all, Li Feng had no crime and he had no right to detain him. Secondly, from the reactions of Carol and Taros, Fury saw that Li Feng was not a weak scum who was powerless like his appearance with a small belly. Outside the window, Carol, who had just recovered some of her memories, couldn't figure out who she was. Was she the pilot Carol Danvers on Earth, or the Kree warrior Foss? Carol's mood now can be imagined. Naturally, she felt disgusted that Talos was still forcing her to help with things when she was confused. Fortunately, Maria said with certainty, "Your name is Carol Danvers. You are the person recorded in the black box. You are my best friend who risks your life to do the right thing." Finally, in Maria's heartwarming words and warm embrace, Carol understood what she should do. At dusk, the few people who had recovered their mood gathered in the living room again to discuss where the energy core was in Lawson Laboratory. "Carol, those numbers are not coordinates, but energy vectors." "Maria, this is what we learn in high school physics. To be honest, Li Feng, who had always treated himself as a background wall and silently leaned against the wall to eat bread, felt amused at the moment when the so-called Skrull chief scientist said he didn't understand with a blank look on his face, and said sadly, "I didn't understand it either. As a time traveler who has never received any memory of the original body, let alone American high school physics class, I don't even know when my body was born by my mother. Should I express guilt to those time travelers who also have souls? After all, I embarrassed you." The living room meeting ended when the Skrull chief scientist said that he could use a hammer and a screwdriver to convert the plane that Carol stole from the joint unit of the Space Agency and the Air Force into a spaceship. Li Feng followed the chief scientist with a curious look on his face. He wanted to see how the other party was so awesome. He converted an airplane into a spaceship. Not to mention installing a gravity device on the plane, it was a problem to say how you provide oxygen to the pilot in space. As for whether anyone will get airsick or altitude sickness when flying in space, Li Feng is not worried. Let's look at who is going to space this time. Carol and Taros, who have been working in outer space for many years, will not be mentioned. They have long been accustomed to the space environment. Maria is a retired Air Force pilot, and the flying altitude is not a problem for her physical fitness. Finally, there is Fury. God knows what kind of training this guy has received. Anyway, he does not wear a spacesuit to go to space, which means he is not stressed. As for Li Feng, he is also on the list of members going to Lawson Laboratory. The reason is that the non-African said that Austin already knows too many things, and it doesn't matter if he knows more. Anyway, Fury has only one purpose, which is to keep Austin out of his sight. Not to mention sleeping, he has to watch him when he goes to the toilet to prevent Li Feng from taking the opportunity to escape. Li Feng touched his forehead, thinking that he would not get airsick in his previous life, and he should, probably not get airsick in this life. It's just that this is the first time he has taken a plane that can fly out of the earth. I don't know how the experience is. I hope it will be a trip that you like. In the backyard, Li Feng looked at the chief scientist with a blank face as he used a grinder to grind parts to modify the plane. After a long time, Li Feng, who really didn't understand, yawned and turned away. Damn, I can't afford to be uneducated, I didn't understand it at all. Anyway, the other party's modification is not magic at all. Yes, no magic, I am a magician, what's wrong with not understanding it, am I proud? Fury wanted to see how the Skrull chief scientist modified the plane with his bare hands, but Li Feng was ready to go back to his room with a sleepy face. What could he do? He could only follow Li Feng back to his room to sleep reluctantly. What is the relationship between the Skrulls and the chameleons on Earth? They are both green, the only difference is that chameleons change color, and Skrulls change shape. Fury touched his chin, thinking, when will I collect some Skrull genes and compare them with the genes of chameleons? Maybe chameleons will become Skrulls after billions of years of evolution in the future. Chapter 16 Run Away. A night that seemed like a lifetime ago. It took only one night to convert an airplane that can only fly in the atmosphere into a space fighter with certain firepower. If this is not a lifetime ago, then what is it? Anyway, Li Feng, who was preparing for a morning run in the morning, stood in front of the space fighter with a buzzing head. He swore that what he saw was definitely an illusion. This was definitely not the result of the chief scientist who didn't even know high school physics working all night. Something unknown must have happened. After a long time, Fury, who was standing behind Li Feng and chewing bread, pushed Li Feng and said, "Mr. Little Belly, welcome to this space summer camp. I hope that this summer camp organized by aliens will give you a pleasant space trip." Li Feng felt a little melancholy when he lowered his head and touched his own little belly. Little belly, little belly, if I didn't exercise and sat in front of the computer all day and grew a thing like you, it would be fine, but I obviously exercise every day. Why are you still reluctant to leave me? To be honest, I'm against you finding a new lover. Really, I dare to swear in front of the headlights of the fighter plane. During this space trip, Fury insisted on bringing Gugu on the plane. He didn't care whether it was a ghost devourer or not. He only knew that Taros and Li Feng were afraid of this cute cat. It was necessary to take some precautions before they gained his trust. Halfway through the flight, Taros couldn't help but remind Fury, who put the devourer on his legs to tease him, "I advise you not to put this creature on your legs to play. It's too dangerous." Fury answered bluntly that he didn't trust Taros, so he took the cute cat for self-defense, which made him somewhat helpless. Is this a question of trust or not? This thing can easily swallow all of us, okay? Maria, who was sitting in the co-pilot seat, asked what she had always been curious about, can you change into anything you want? Taros, it depends on what it becomes. Maria, can the file cabinet change? Taros was a little confused. Does the file cabinet have genes for him to copy? Who knows if the gene of the file cabinet is a double helix or some other structure? Besides, why did he turn into a file cabinet? He is the commander of the Skrulls. Is he short of 1 or 2 file cabinets? Fury, where is the Venus flytrap? I bet you can't make one. If you can, I'll give you $50 right away. Li Feng, who was sitting in the last row, couldn't help laughing. Hearing what Maria and Fury asked, Maria was just curious, and Fury, haha, this guy is not simple-minded. Fury knew that the Skrulls could only turn into creatures with genes, so he wanted to know if they could turn into plants. If they could only turn into humans, it would be fine. At most, he would suspect one and ask one. After all, the Skrulls can only copy the other's short-term memory, which is a flaw. If the Skrulls could turn into plants, it would be troublesome. If they hid in the forest, he couldn't find their figures. He couldn't just grab a suspicious plant and ask if you were a Skrull, right? And what would others think of him? Arrest him and send him to a mental hospital? Or burn a forest to catch a Skrull who turned into a plant? This is too much of a loss. Don't you know that protecting the environment is everyone's responsibility? It is also troublesome for the other party to stay in his office as a bonsai. He may know his bank account password one day, and all his money will be gone. However, Li Feng glanced at Taros with a little disdain. He can also transform. There is transformation magic in Barstow's magic book. It's just that Li Feng's current mastery is not proficient enough, resulting in too many flaws. People can tell at a glance that Li Feng is like wearing a rubber mask. As for turning the Skrulls into filing cabinets, Li Feng said that if Taros really wants to transform, the other party should not call himself a Skrull, but directly say that he is a descendant of the great sage or Erlang Shen, and change his name to Taros Sun or Taros Yang. Li Feng's mouth-covering laughter made Fury turn his head and say, "Oh, it seems that there are still people here who know the background of the Skrulls." At this time, Carol reminded that the plane would accelerate away from the Earth and asked everyone to fasten their seat belts. While fastening his seat belt, Fury asked Li Feng, "Mr. Little Belly, is the seat belt on your seat long enough? As long as you tell me who you are, I will lend you one of my seat belts." Pointing at Taros, Fury continued, "Or tell me what race the Skrulls are, and I will also lend you one of my seat belts." This question was a bit malicious. As long as Li Feng casually mentioned some characteristics of the Skrulls, Fury would know that someone had known about the existence of aliens for a long time. It doesn't matter if he doesn't answer. With his eyesight as a senior agent, he can also see from Li Feng's eyes whether he doesn't want to answer this question or really doesn't know. But Fury didn't expect that Li Feng would cover his face and not speak after rolling his eyes. Li Feng didn't believe it, and Fury could still see his facial expression through his palm. At this time, the space fighter flew out of the Earth and entered the Earth's orbit. Fury looked at Li Feng thoughtfully, turned his head and looked at the space. "Where is the laboratory as promised? Why is it so dark? Could it be that the laboratory is as dark as my face, so dark that I can't see it without lights?" Carol was just stunned for a moment, and then she thought of the stealth technology, and quickly cracked the stealth device that Dr. Lawson used to protect the laboratory. Looking at the Kree cruiser that suddenly appeared, Carol's mouth corners slightly raised. In the memory that suddenly appeared in her before and she didn't know whether it was true or not, drive. Lawson was a Kree who opposed the war. The sudden appearance of the Kree cruiser showed from the side that Dr. Lawson was indeed a Kree. It also further proves that she is indeed a native of Earth. Is there any better news than knowing who you are and what you want to do in the future? The fighter plane slowly docked into the cruiser. Talos couldn't wait to get off the plane to look for his family. On the way, Talos picked up a baseball on the ground. He couldn't hold back his excitement and could not help but speed up and continue moving forward. Soon, the group of people walked to the hall where the cosmic cube was stored. Li Feng quickened his pace and walked to the universal Rubik's Cube. He reached out and took off the glowing Rubik's Cube. With a vague twitch at the corner of his mouth, he handed the cube to Carol. "As I had judged at the beginning, all I could do was hold the Rubik's Cube for a few seconds." Although Li Feng had only been exposed to the Rubik's Cube for a few seconds, he already knew that the space gem's energy was too high for a rookie mage like him. Let alone using the energy of the Rubik's Cube, he could not even extract a trace of energy for his own use. If used forcibly, he will only be torn into pieces by the tyrannical energy of the space gem and sent to all parts of the universe, and even his soul will be torn into pieces. This is also the reason why Li Feng knew that he could get the space gem on the Kree cruiser, but he was thinking about how to leave and did not want to participate in Captain Marvel's battle against the Kree. Since the Rubik's Cube is currently useless to him, Li Feng has no interest in whose hands it is safer to keep the Rubik's Cube, and this is not the only chance to get the space gem. Of the 6 Infinity Stones, the one that appears the most in the Marvel world is the Space Stone, and it is also the easiest stone to get. When Carol took over the Rubik's Cube, Li Feng, who was always paying attention to the energy of the Rubik's Cube, showed a trace of bitterness on his lips. Carol was worthy of being the protagonist, and the energy in his body echoed the Rubik's Cube even before he had fully touched it. The amount of mana I gained from my hard training was as much as Carol's increase in holding the Rubik's Cube in just a few seconds. The most annoying thing is that Carol doesn't know that her own energy is soaring. It is said that the cosmic Rubik's Cube is not going to take Carol's surname. Look at the licking dog who actively sends energy. If Carol has been holding the space gem, maybe the space gem will actually have the same surname as Carol in a few years. With fury focusing on the steaming coffee, Li Feng quietly walked to the entrance of a passage, just waiting for the Kree Yongrog to arrive and escape instantly. Now that you have come, how can you leave this cruise ship without picking up some benefits? As Talos called to his tribe, the Skrulls came out of the darkness one by one. Carol instantly understood that Talos was not just looking for the Lightspeed engine to find a new home, he was also looking for his family. While complaining about the difference between Talos's cry and Tarzan's, Li Feng paid attention to the entrance of the hall, waiting for Yongrog to appear and then ran into the passage. Yongrog did not disappoint Li Feng. Soon he led his men to the hall. The moment the hall door opened, Li Feng disappeared in front of Yongrog. Yongrog turned to look at his men, and signaled to send out an ordinary team member to catch Li Feng who had just escaped. As for the people left at the scene, he didn't think these Skrulls and Earthlings had the power to resist him, even if not even Carol. Yongrog activated the position item on his wrist, causing Carol to collapse to the ground. He ordered the elite team members to escort Carol and let her connect to the Supreme Leader for brainwashing. The ordinary team members searched for SK who was hiding on the cruiser. Lu people and Li Feng. It's strange to say that people were clearly sent to hunt down Li Feng, but why hasn't the soldier found Li Feng yet? This group of elites would only think that Li Feng was so good at hiding, but they would not have thought that the soldier who was chasing Li Feng had already received a lunchbox and was stripped naked. There is no way, who makes Li Feng poor? He has been coveting the armor on the Kree soldiers for a long time. When Li Feng thought about it, since these clothes can change the color through energy, they can also use magic power to change the color or shape. After all, magic power it is also a type of energy. Unfortunately, after Li Feng stripped off the poor soldier's armor, he realized that he was overthinking it. The armor of ordinary soldiers was not as high-end as Carol's, and had no ability other than some defense. In fact, this is normal, just like ordinary soldiers on Earth wearing weapons that can be used by special forces. Don't you know that the weapons of special forces are not only advanced but also expensive? To equip all soldiers with the equipment of elite troops, the Kree must be killed. Li Feng spat at the Kree soldier who was killed by a magic playing card. Li Feng casually discarded the armor and muttered while checking the Kree gun, "Unlucky, it looks like I have to wait for Carol to kill him. The elite queen is going to pick up some bargains." The corners of Li Feng's mouth raised slightly, sensing the energy in the weapons of the nearby Kree people, and said to himself, "But before that, even if I have a plan to fake death, I have to rescue the African chief and leave him with me." It's a good impression of the righteous side. Chapter 17 Magic Experiment. Carol was taken to a secret room and was forcibly connected to the Supreme Leader of the Kree without being able to struggle and was about to be brainwashed. However, Carol was not easy to mess with. After chatting with the Supreme Leader for a few words, she showed an appearance of not listening, turtle chanting scriptures and punched the Supreme Leader. If Carol had not fallen into the territory of the Supreme Leader at this time, perhaps Carol could really stand up to him. Then it was the scene where the bad guy died because of talking too much. The Supreme Leader played Carol's memory, which not only made Carol recall all her memories, but also did not notice that the cosmic cube in the distance of Carol was glowing and heating, transmitting its own energy to Carol over a long distance. On the other side, Li Feng, who was hiding in the corner, poked his head and looked at the 3 Kree soldiers guarding Taros. Although the Kree guns were great in recoil, sound, and power, when it came to killing 3 people at a time, Li Feng felt that his magic poker cards were more reliable. At least the poker cards could fly silently. And 3 cards could be sent out at a time to kill 3 soldiers at the same time. In the cell, Taros stared blankly at 3 playing cards flying out from the corner behind the 3 soldiers, hitting the faces of the 3 soldiers accurately and exploding, killing the 3 Kree soldiers on the spot. Then came the guy whose genes he could not replicate. He walked in front of him with a playing card in one hand and scratched his head with the other hand. He looked at the button next to the cell door and said, "Taros, how do you open this thing?" Taros smiled slightly, and while teaching Li Feng how to open the door, he said in his heart, I know this guy is not an earthling. How can an earthling shoot out cards that can explode?" As soon as the cell door opened, Taros turned into a Kree, picked up a weapon from the ground, and said, "We still have to save the 2 earthlings." 2 earthlings? By the way, do you have any misunderstandings? Aren't Carol and I earthlings? Regardless of the past life or the present life, I am a Han Chinese on Earth. Rolling his eyes, Li Feng threw the weapon in his hand to a scroll. Li Feng, who had never practiced shooting, said that he was not used to this thing. As a magician, the poker cards in his hand were more suitable for the identity of a magician. Of course, considering that Taros would live on Earth for a long time, Li Feng specifically asked Taros to conceal the fact that he was a magician. At least before he became strong, he insisted on taking the route of quietly developing. Although Taros was puzzled as to why Li Feng claimed to be an earthling, he still had a good impression of Li Feng who saved his life, and nodded to agree to Li Feng's request. Li Feng disguised himself as a prisoner and was escorted to Fury by Taros disguised as a Kree. It can only be said that the Kree were too confident in their own energy handcuffs, or too arrogant about their own strength. They actually only let 2 Kree soldiers escort Maria and Fury to the apron, ready to throw the 2 into space. In this case, if he didn't show his excellence, it would be a waste of Li Feng's hard work. Li Feng, who was pretending to be a prisoner, walked towards the 2 soldiers. When he passed the front of the team and saw a soldier holding a cage of the Yuan-devouring beast, Li Feng winked at Fury in a subtle way. When Li Feng walked to the side of the soldier at the end, he punched him on the temple. While Li Feng was punching, Fury also kicked the other's male vitals and knocked him to the ground. As for the other soldier, he was killed directly by Taros. When the soldier knocked down by Li Feng and Flo was about to get up, Taros raised his gun and shot him in the chest. Fury, with his hands burned by the energy handcuffs, turned his head and winked at Li Feng behind him, saying, "Look, how happy we are to cooperate. If we deepen our contact, maybe we can have a better understanding. You want to get my information before you even escape. Should I praise you for being so dedicated?" While uncuffing Fury, Li Feng said, "I'll say the same thing again. Wait until you learn the tongue twister before asking me questions. Of course, next time it won't be about red carp, green carp and donkey." After uncuffing Fury, Li Feng patted Fury on the shoulder and said, "Young man, I believe in you. Go back and study Chinese." Fury was a little confused. It wasn't that Li Feng asked him to learn Chinese, but that Li Feng went straight into a passage and left after helping him uncuffed. It was obvious that he was not going to leave the cruiser with him. Fury turned around and asked Taros, "I'm starting to like this guy. Do you know where he wants to go? Maybe I can help him." "Help? I'm afraid he wants to find out who Austin is and what he wants to do?" With a look of contempt, Talos pointed at his green face, shook his head and said, "Do you think that an alien who has just been on Earth for a few days will be so familiar with an Earthling that he will be open-hearted to me and tell me everything?" This made Fury unable to refute, and he shrugged his shoulders. Fury said, "Now take your people to the fighter plane, return to Earth first and talk about other things." At this time, the equipment in the cruiser was attacked by an external energy, and the lights of the entire cruiser flickered several times as if the voltage was unstable. Li Feng, who was hiding in the corner as a spectator, was first happy. He knew that Captain Marvel officially appeared and was ready to kill in the cruiser. Then he was stunned. Li Feng clearly sensed that the upper limit of mana had increased after this force passed through himself, and it was still an increase of more than half. Li Feng grinned, secretly delighted in his heart. It's not that the mana increased, but the upper limit of mana increased by more than half, which means that my potential has increased in the energy impact just now. There is also this good thing, otherwise find an opportunity to let Carol explode a few more times. I don't ask for high requirements, just push my potential to the current level of Ancient One. It can only be said that Li Feng is too greedy. He is not satisfied with the benefits he has now, and this time the benefits are far more than Li Feng thought. Just like in the game, the mana bar of a level 1 mage is 100, the mana bar of a level 2 mage is 200, and the mana bar of a level 3 mage is 300. Li Feng, a level 1 mage, has grown the mana bar to 150, and when he becomes level 2, the mana bar will be 300, directly having the mana bar of a level 3 mage. Although the spells released by Li Feng at level 2 are still level 2, he can release spells multiple times with more mana. And the more mana, the faster the mana recovery speed. Otherwise, the recovery speed of mages of all levels is the same. A level 1 mage said that he had recovered 100 mana points, but what about a level 100 mage? Can he only see a little mana with a low mana slot? Li Feng, who didn't know how much benefit he had gained, heard the sound of Carol and Young Roger fighting, and quietly came to the vicinity of the battlefield. Hiding in the distance and watching Carol's mighty power beat the so-called elite team into a state of collapse, Li Feng always felt that something was missing around him, such as popcorn and coke. Watching live is much more interesting than sitting in a cinema. Of course, it is also more dangerous. Just like now, one of the elites spotted Li Feng's figure and rushed towards Li Feng with a long knife emitting green light and a grin. Li Feng raised his eyebrows and turned to run to a corner. He now likes to fight at corners more and more. It's so cool that the enemy can't see him, but his mental power can easily lock the opponent's figure. In addition, the poker card does not fly in a straight line. It can also turn and attack the opponent's face at the other side of the corner under Li Feng's control. The fireball that exploded directly on the face of the elite warrior made his brain buzz a little, and his movements were all dazed. Li Feng didn't want to waste such a good opportunity. He shot the poker cards with both hands at the same time and sighed, the equipment of the elite is indeed extraordinary, and this set of protective props is also unique. The poker cards that ordinary soldiers can kill directly can only stun the opponent against these people's protective gear. Li Feng walked to the dizzy Kree elite, picked up the long knife dropped by the opponent, and stabbed it into the opponent's eyeball cleanly, killing him. Looking at the long knife in his hand, Li Feng grinned and complained, "How much do the Kree like green? The uniform is green, and the weapon must also emit green lasers. Isn't red good? If it doesn't work, yellow is fine." The knife is a good knife, but Li Feng feels that he still needs to modify it, at least not to let the knife emit green light, otherwise he always feels that the shadow area in his heart is expanding when he uses it. Dragging the Kree elite who was killed by him to the side, Li Feng closed his eyes to sense the long sword's ability to conduct mana. In Li Feng's eyes, since this long sword can be filled with energy on the blade, it can naturally be transformed into a magic long sword. After a while, Li Feng grinned and carried the long sword behind him, waiting to find the right magic material to modify it. As for the protective clothing on the elite, Li Feng was naturally not polite, and directly stripped the other party into a naked man with blue and black. While tying the naked man's left foot and right hand in front of him, and his right foot and left hand behind him, Li Feng muttered, "This guy is not a hybrid, the Kree people are all blue, why is yours blue and black?" Using a thick rope tied to the naked man's waist and hanging in the air, Li Feng used his magic power to point at the dead naked man. He didn't chop off the other party's head before, just to avoid destroying the body, because he was going to try the spell he learned in the other world, the spell to communicate with the undead. This kind of spell actually has many shortcomings. For example, the dead body needs to be intact to summon the soul projection of the other party back to the body. Otherwise, why did Li Feng go through the trouble of tying and hanging him? It would be safer to just chop off the head and cast the spell. The enemy has lost his hands and feet, so he will not let Li Feng bully him. As the magic power entered the naked man's body, the naked man turned his head around with a blank look on his face. When he saw Li Feng looking at him with a sarcastic face, the naked man instantly remembered who killed him. He was puzzled about how he was resurrected after death, and wanted to break free from the ropes that bound him so that he could punch Li Feng in the face. Li Feng saw that the spell could be used in the Marvel world, stretched out his right hand and snapped his fingers to end the spell, allowing the naked man's soul projection to return to where he should go. After the spell experiment was completed, Li Feng breathed a sigh of relief, frowned, bent down to pick up the naked man's armor, and put it in his hand and operated it randomly. For a long time, Li Feng thought silently whether he should wear this tights. First of all, although the clothes have strong defense, they are really not suitable for magic modification into robes. This thing conducts energy too poorly, and relies more on the material of the clothes itself for defense. Secondly, has anyone ever seen a wizard wearing tights to cast spells? Whether it is novels or film and television dramas, wizards always appear in loose robes. Finally, Li Feng folded the clothes and put them in his shoulder bag. Anyway, the defense is still good. At most, I will wear it as underwear and put on the robe outside. Chapter 18 A different Marvel world. Carol's battle and Li Feng's magic experiment did not affect Fury's escape with the few remaining Skrulls. On the fighter plane, Talos frowned and looked at the hatch that was about to close, and said to Fury, "Where is Austin? Should we wait? If we leave him on the cruiser, he will definitely die." Fury felt a little pity. He hadn't figured out Li Feng's specific identity yet, but the soldier's instinct told him that they should leave as soon as possible, especially since Carol could easily blast open the shell of the cruiser after her whole body glowed, and continue to stay. In addition to facing the pursuit of the Kree here, we also have to be careful that Carol dismantles the cruiser. This is not the time to wait for Li Feng to come back. And the agent's intuition told him that there was definitely something wrong with Li Feng. Maybe Li Feng could return to Earth alive and kicking. Shaking his head at Talos, Fury ordered Maria to return to Earth as soon as possible. As the commander of Skrull, Talos knew that Fury's choice was the most correct at the moment and that he could not put the entire team into crisis because of one person, but he still felt a little guilty. While looking at the hatch that kept closing, while silently praying in his heart, "My friend Austin, I hope you can survive." The moment the hatch closed, the Kree pursuers also arrived, and a shot hit Talos in the shoulder, who was still praying for Li Feng. "Maiden, I'd better pray that I can survive first." Through the window, Li Feng quietly watched Maria leave in a fighter plane, and then watched two small spaceships fly towards the Earth. Li Feng curled his lips and said to himself, "Why did you just leave? I also wanted to use illusions to let Fury see me fake my death. It was all because of the blue-black Kree man who ruined my plan." Scratching his head, Li Feng happily ran to the place where Carol had fought before. Lying there were an elite team of Kree people with a large number of high-tech equipment. These were weapons that could apply energy. If the magic is modified, it will leave a lot of money for Li Feng to buy magic materials. Speaking of which, there are really not many magic materials on Marvel's Earth, and most of them have been collected or monopolized by Comitage. A wandering mage like Li Feng who has no money, and still no money doesn't even know if he wants to buy some magic materials. Where can I buy it? Fortunately, Li Feng can smuggle materials from other worlds. Otherwise, Li Feng would still find a cost-effective way to join Comitage. Wrapping the daggers, armor, wristbands, and other materials scattered on the ground in tablecloths, Li Feng opened the portal with a smile on his face and returned directly to the suburbs of New York on Earth. In the suburbs of New York, an orange portal suddenly appeared next to a deserted highway. After Li Feng came out of the portal, he looked around to see if anyone noticed him. After confirming that no one was nearby, Li Feng glanced at the large package behind him, touched the only $10,000 in his pocket, and muttered, "Bringing these alien weapons and equipment on the street is too conspicuous, and practicing magic requires silence. In this environment, I will honestly find a place in the suburbs to digest this harvest. When the potential is transformed into strength, I will go to other worlds." Touching the tights of the Kree elite team, Li Feng's lips twitched as he thought, "In order to travel to another world, I have something to wear, and tights are just tights so that I can authentically travel naked to another world. Is it easy for me?" Li Feng, who was walking along the road, looked up at the huge fireworks caused by Carol easily destroying Ronan's battleship in space, and searched for the memories in his mind as he walked towards a lake in the distance, hoping to sort it out in the lake. Messy hair, and a body that's about to be infested with lice. It's not because Li Feng doesn't care about cleanliness. He went all the way to Louisiana to buy a RV and tidied up his personal hygiene. Who knew he would be inexplicably involved in the Captain Marvel incident? What's even more outrageous is that Fury is a pervert. "Agent," he went to the big room and followed Li Feng, saying that he could bear it, but he allowed Fury to watch him take a shower for free. Li Feng said that he really couldn't bear it. There was no other way. Li Feng, who was wandering in the wilderness all the way, could only leave the Kree cruiser to take care of his personal hygiene. Maybe God thinks that Li Feng is not sloppy enough and can further evolve into a homeless man on the street. Approaching the small lake, Li Feng watched speechlessly as two men in the distance were working together to set up a large tent, and a younger woman was playing with a child by the lake. The remaining one was older. The older woman is in front of the barbecue grill grilling on the charcoal fire. Touching his itchy scalp, Li Feng's eyes twitched slightly. I just want to take a bath, why should someone come to visit for free? After taking a look at the lake, which was so clean that it could be used as a mirror, Li Feng walked silently to the other side of the lake, preparing to stay away from this family, no, 2 families, and take a bath in the water while it was dark. The older woman playing with the barbecue saw the homeless-looking Li Feng approaching the lake, and subconsciously shouted to the older man setting up the tent, Ben. Ben lowered his head and continued to knock the tent's fixed rope into the soil, and asked, May? What's wrong? Is the barbecue ready? The younger man next to Ben looked up at May, followed May's gaze, and saw Li Feng approaching the lake in slippers and carrying a large package. He subconsciously patted Ben on the shoulder and motioned for Ben to look at Li Feng. The kind-hearted Ben glanced at Li Feng, stood up and shouted, Hey, young man, do you need help? Li Feng originally didn't want to talk to the 2 families who came here to camp, but he just thought that he didn't have a razor around him, and he didn't have the skills to shave with an alien dagger. Looking at the large and small bags of food next to May, Li Feng estimated that the 2 families were preparing to live a camping life for 2 days. After thinking about it, he walked towards Ben and said in an uncertain tone, If possible, I would like to borrow it for a shaved knife. The man next to Ben originally wanted to warn Ben to be careful about the homeless man, but unexpectedly Ben directly offered to help him. He felt a little unhappy but said nothing, because he understood Ben's nature. Seeing Li Feng approaching him and asking for help, Ben walked towards Li Feng and said to the younger man behind him, Richard, help me get my razor. I will guide him to stay away from little Peter to avoid giving birth to a child. What happened? Obviously, people are kind-hearted in nature, but they are not bad people, and they still need to take precautions. After a while, Li Feng and Ben walked to the lake. Richard walked into Li Feng holding Ben's razor and handed the razor to Li Feng, who was still washing his face. Li Feng took the razor and glanced at Richard's somewhat bulging waist. It's probably a pistol for self-defense. Why, don't I look like a good person? I just finished saving the Earth. Do you know that although the credit mainly belongs to Carol, even if I took the blame for the whole process, I also killed several evil aliens with my own hands. Li Feng smiled, Thank you, my name is Austin, what do you call these 2 gentlemen? Ben Parker. Ben introduced himself with a smile, pointed at Richard and said, This is my brother, Richard Parker. Li Feng, couldn't these be the parents of Spider-Man in New York's Good Neighborhood, and Uncle Ben who said, With great power comes great responsibility. By the way, Ben looks much younger now, but he is still kind-hearted. Glancing at the 2 women in the distance, Li Feng felt something was wrong. According to Ben's age, Aunt May should be the older one, but Aunt May in the film is a fashionable beauty. What's going on? Am I wrong? This is not Peter Parker's family. Or is the woman playing with the little kid Aunt May? The older one is Spider-Man's mother? I saw Li Feng looking at his wife in a daze, thinking that the homeless man Li Feng was hungry and was attracted by the smell of food in front of his wife. Looking at May with a happy face, he said to Li Feng with a smile, When you finish shaving, I will treat you to something to eat. Believe me, you will like my wife's cooking. May's cooking skills are first-rate. Another name matched up, so this was really Spy Day and his family camping out, and the older woman was really Aunt May? What kind of situation is this for fashionable beauties? Is it possible that Aunt May couldn't bear the loneliness after Ben's death and went for plastic surgery to change her image from the inside out? Wait, there are a lot of versions of Spider-Man movies, and there are several in the Marvel universe. Is it possible that the Marvel world I am in is not a world where the purple sweet potato snaps his fingers? But another Marvel world? Li Feng felt that his mind was a little messed up, and he almost scratched his face while shaving. Fortunately, Li Feng had been lying by the lake shaving, and Ben and Richard behind him didn't notice anything unusual. After a while, Li Feng, who had finished shaving, returned the razor to Richard and asked tentatively, Mr. Richard, I think you look familiar. I seem to have seen you somewhere. Let me think about it. I wonder if you know a man named Connors. I vaguely remember seeing your photo in Connors's place. Richard looked Li Feng up and down, nodded slightly and said, Curtis Connors? He is my good friend. Dr. Lizard Connors. So this is the Marvel world with the Amazing Spider-Man version. Although he knows which version of the Marvel world he is in, Li Feng is still a little confused because he has watched Women's Federation 3. The plot of Women's Federation 4 takes place in the world next door, and what is the difference between the current world and the Marvel world next door? Li Feng he said he didn't know, maybe it was the same except for the Spider-Man plot, maybe it was different. Ma Dan doesn't care. Anyway, I have countless worlds on my back. As long as I become stronger, I'm not afraid even if the purple sweet potato spirit comes from next door and kills me. Hey, it seems that there are purple sweet potato spirits in this world too. What do you think will happen if two purple sweet potato spirits meet? What kind of sparks were created? Should the two hold each other's hands and cry with tears in their eyes, telling each other about the hardships of the past years, or should they just pinch each other when they meet? Forgetting Ben's invitation to dinner, Li Feng didn't want to get too involved with the little spider family, so he waved goodbye to Ben and just walked to the other side of the lake. As night fell, Li Feng was planning to finish eating the dry food and take a bath in the water, when he saw Ben walking towards him carrying a disposable paper plate with a piece of steaming beef on it. Li Feng blinked in confusion and asked, "Mr. Ben, is something wrong?" Ben glanced at the shoulder bag behind Li Feng and the clean change of clothes on the floor, handed the steak to Li Feng and said, "Sorry, I thought you were a homeless man before. Are you hiking?" Chapter 19 We Are Different. Li Feng, who took the steak, glanced at the clothes on the ground, then looked at the big package wrapped in the alien tights, and found that Uncle Ben couldn't wear these green clothes. He breathed a sigh of relief and said, "Yes, hiking, but you also see, it's my first time traveling and I have no experience, so I forgot to bring my razor." Ben sat next to Li Feng and said with a smile, "Humans, don't they grow up into handsome young men through regret, confusion and forgetting things again and again?" Li Feng took a bite of the juicy steak and gave Ben a thumbs up. He not only praised Aunt May for his good craftsmanship, but also praised Ben for seeing that he was a handsome young man, showing that he really has a good taste. "Ben, what's your destination?" Li Feng was stunned. He really hadn't thought about this problem. He just walked in a random direction. He didn't want to communicate with others or step into the human group society. He just wanted to find a place with few people to grow up quietly. That's all. With a bit of confusion, Li Feng shook his head and said, "My parents passed away 3 years ago. I lost my memory due to a car accident 2 years ago. I even forgot how to speak English. I still haven't recovered my past memories. How can I remember what fun things are nearby? Yes, I just plan to go out and have a look. When I get tired, I will find a place to settle down." Looking at Li Feng's sloppy appearance now, I thought Li Feng must have lived a very hard life in the past 2 years. After all, he has even forgotten the language for basic communication. How can life not be hard? Moreover, Ben could clearly hear the uncertainty in Li Feng's words. He felt that Li Feng was like a stray ant now, full of confusion about the future. With a hint of apology, Ben said sincerely, "I'm sorry." When he was Li Feng's age, he had been confused for a while, but the blow he received was not as severe as Li Feng's. It's just a short-term confusion. It's not a big problem. Since Li Feng has learned English again, it means that he can survive the pressure. When Li Feng understands what it means to think about how much bread he needs to survive every day when he opens his eyes, you will no longer be confused, and after you have a family, you will understand what a sweet burden is. Sharing some life experiences with Li Feng, Ben saw his wife waving to him in the distance, indicating that his dinner was ready. Ben stood up and patted Li Feng on the shoulder and said, "You can come here when you feel you can settle down. Queens, New York, where I've lived most of my life, feels like the best neighborhood in America." Li Feng was stunned, looked up at Ben, and said with a smile, "Thank you, I will do it." Ben waved to say goodbye, walked a few steps and suddenly returned, took out the razor from his pocket and handed it to Li Feng, shrugged and said, "I almost forgot about this little thing, I gave it to you. I'll see you later if I have a chance. You are welcome to come to my house." "Goodbye, confused little one." Looking at Ben going away, Li Feng rubbed his eyebrows. After more than 2 years in this world, Li Feng felt that apart from Guyi treating him like a son, he also communicated with Ben as a friend. Although the United States claims that everyone is equal all day long, is it realistic? Except for Li Feng, he still feels friendly in Chinatown. The rest of the outsiders look at him with some contempt when they see him wearing slippers all day long. What's wrong with me wearing slippers? I always liked wearing slippers in my previous life. Not to mention they are cooler and you go to bed quickly. It's not like you have to take off your shoes and socks. I even slept in that time. After finishing the steak in silence, Li Feng looked in the direction of the camp again and thought to himself, just treat me to a steak and give you a razor, share your growing experience with me as a friend, and invite me to your home. I have saved your life. As a magician, I say this. There is no other way for you to die except old age. Taking advantage of the night to wash himself off, Li Feng lay on the grass with his hands on the back of his head and looked up at the stars. For some reason, he heard little Peter laughing and calling Richard Daddy in the distance, and he always thought of another one in his mind. What your own child looks like in the world, I don't know how the little guy is doing. The first thing he learned is whether it's daddy or mommy. It should be mommy. After all, I'm not with you anymore. Wiping his red and moist eyes, Li Feng stood up and packed his luggage. How could he sleep like this, especially with the sounds of play in the distance? Let alone practicing magic, he couldn't even sleep peacefully. In this case, he might as well go away consciously. After walking for a while, Li Feng felt that the family couldn't see him casting a spell, so he posed and reached out to open the portal. Where is the place on Earth where one can magically modify long knives, possess magically modified materials, and learn to forge props? There is only Comitage. Moreover, Comitage not only knows that there are aliens in this world, but also the magical creatures living in foreign lands. She probably can't even see the slightest expression of surprise when faced with the Cree trophies collected by Li Feng. It is the best way to hide these alien tools. Place. Comitage, living room. Guyi sipped tea and pondered over the contents of the spell book word by word. Suddenly, she felt something and looked up to the middle of the living room. A second later, an orange-yellow portal gradually took shape. Guyi ignored Li Feng's sharp look and looked at the dark suburbs of New York through the teleportation device. He felt that the corners of his eyes were beating uncontrollably. Li Feng crossed the portal and saluted Guyi with both hands. Before he could say hello, he heard Guyi, who had his back turned to him, stood up and poured tea and said, "You opened the portal directly from the suburbs of New York to get here." Li Feng scratched his head, nodded and said, "Yes, Master, is there anything wrong with the portal I used? What is the problem?" "The problem is big." Guyi handed the tea to Li Feng, stretched out his hand to signal Li Feng to sit down and chat slowly, and said, "Although the portal can take us anywhere, it has a prerequisite. You must be able to open it. It is like an adult holding the door opener. The key can easily open the door, and a person who has not been in the mage field for a long time is more like a human child. Do you think that if you give a child a key, he will have the power to twist the key and open the door? The portal is not a toy lock designed specifically for children." Li Feng held the teacup, thought for a while and said blankly, "You mean, judging from my magic power, my teleportation gate can't be opened that far? It can only be used in the city. Isn't that right? When I cast the portal for the first time, I opened the door directly to Argentina, thousands of miles away. Is it possible that I have a special talent for portal spells? No wonder it has become easier and easier to open doors recently. I thought it was due to my proficiency in brushing portals." Ancient One sat back in his seat, raised his eyebrows and said, "What if? If the mage can easily use the portal to get where he wants to go, I will build 3 portals in the library leading to New York, Hong Kong, and London." "Well? It's not so that those mages who are apprentices like you can follow you to the 3 major temples as soon as possible." Li Feng pinched the tip of his nose. From Guyi's words, he felt that he could be a little proud. After all, counting from the time he traveled to the Marvel world, plus the time he spent traveling to other worlds, how long has he been here? Not even 3 years old. Due to the problem of fusion of soul and body 2 years before the surgery, how long did he really learn spells? What about now? He just wanted to ask loudly, who else can open the portal to any place on the earth? "We are different. It seems that I underestimate your understanding of space and your talent for space magic." After praising Li Feng, Guyi glanced at Li Feng's large tablecloth package and said, "And you still have some Q, I can feel the spell-casting materials in your package. Are you a businessman?" Li Feng opened the package with a smile, told the story of his encounter with Carol, pointed at a pile of scattered weapons and clothes, and said, "If possible, I want to forge a magic sword and a piece of clothing. The remaining materials are mine. I wonder if the master will agree to the tuition fee for learning the skills of forging magic props." Ancient One glanced at the green clothes, squinted and said, the equipment of the Kree elite team, maybe I shouldn't just focus on those exotic magical creatures that want to invade the Earth, but also on these aggressive creatures, alien races, at least those aliens who want to destroy the Earth. Li Feng did not comment on this. Currently, Fury is afraid that he has already obtained the Kree cruiser. As long as scientists crack part of the cruiser's technology, S.H.I.E.L.D.'s technological reserves will exceed those of most countries on the Earth. Even if Gu Yi sets his sights on these aliens, he will only aim at them, not take action. Although S.H.I.E.L.D. will be extremely rotten internally in the future, it will still share the same hatred when facing aliens. After all, Hydra's goal is to rule the Earth. Who will they rule over an Earth that has been smashed by aliens? I'm afraid that even they will become slaves of aliens by then, which is not what Hydra wants to see. Therefore, in terms of protecting the Earth, the two parties have cooperated well and protected the Earth quite well. Ancient Yi clapped his hands and asked Master Hamel, who had lost his left hand, to come in and said, Master Hamel, put these materials back into the warehouse and take some books on forging magic props to Li Feng. After speaking, Gu Yi said to Li Feng again, you should stay in the room you lived in before. Oh, by the way, I still have some things to communicate with you. Considering that the place you stayed before was at night, you should rest first. Or should we talk now? Li Feng picked up a long knife and a piece of green clothes from the package, smiled at Hamel, turned to Gu Yi and said, now, I have no intention of sleeping now. Gu Yi actually didn't have much to say. He mainly wanted to see if Li Feng had listened to his advice and not come into contact with dark energy easily, and he wanted to ask about Barstow's spell to change the flow of time. In the past few days when Li Feng left, Gu Yi devoted himself to studying time and made a lot of achievements. At least she can now change the flow of time around living creatures. As Li Feng's spirit body appeared in the Merlin demonic ring, Gu Yi saw that Li Feng's growth potential had increased. He also saw that Li Feng's talent for space was not only growing during the energy impact, but also his talent for time. It is also deepening. After Li Feng finished performing his training results, Gu Yi thought about it and explained time in a way that Li Feng could understand. This made Li Feng feel wrong. He felt that it was time for him to practice the magic about the passage of time. Chapter 20 Mordo and Number 039, S Teachings. In the early morning, when the first ray of warm sunlight shone through the window onto Li Feng's face, who was sleeping in a big shape, Li Feng subconsciously covered his ears, hoping to block out the humming and hawing sound made by the mage outside the window during morning exercises. After a long time, Li Feng got up helplessly and sat at the head of the bed, yawning and complaining. Aren't mages all practicing magic quietly? What's the matter with you humming and hawing and shouting slogans all day long? Those who know understand that you know that being a mage must have a good body, and those who don't know think that you are a group of coolies, or coolies who get up at the crowing of the cock. With faint dark circles under his eyes, Li Feng held a few basics of alchemy books placed by Mage Hamel on the head of the bed in one hand, and a pot of tea heated by fire summoning in the other hand. He dragged his slippers and ignored the apprentice formation who looked at him speechlessly, and walked straight to the shade of the tree in the corner, sipping tea and slowly flipping through the books in his hands. After a long time, Li Feng, who was reading a book, suddenly saw a pair of Valter's jumping shoes in front of him. Li Feng looked up, then continued to read and asked, Modu, do you have something to do with me? Modu was not familiar with Li Feng, but he knew that the Ancient One was good to Li Feng. Adhering to the principle of the Ancient One is the sky, the Ancient One is the earth, the Ancient One is the gods, and is everything to me, Mordu smiled and said to Li Feng, Master Ancient One told me that you have a talent for space-related spells, so I was specially asked to teach you the high-end spell-casting skills of portals and mirror space spells. Closing the book, Li Feng stood up and subconsciously asked, where is Master Ancient One? Modu shrugged and said, the Supreme Sorcerer has his own responsibilities and cannot always act as a mentor for a rookie. Extending his hand to signal Li Feng to go to a quieter practice field, Mordu said, I don't know why the Ancient One took a fancy to you but didn't recruit you into Camartage, but I know she hopes you will receive daily spell training in Camartage. Of course, your main task at present is to quickly use portals and mirror space. Ancient One to perform his duties? According to you, alien creatures have invaded the Marvel world? Which blind world dares to invade when the Ancient One is still alive and kicking? Aren't you afraid of being hung up by the Ancient One and beaten to the point of crying for your mother? Li Feng nodded to show that he understood that the Ancient One was saving the earth and had no time to care about him. He turned his head and looked around, and said uncertainly, Practicing mirror space here? Are you sure? Although there were not many apprentices disturbing the corner of the training ground, it was indeed a good place for Li Feng to practice portals, but the mirror space was dangerous. Wasn't Mordo afraid that when Li Feng used the mirror space, he would accidentally wrap a nearby unlucky apprentice into the mirror space? What if this unlucky apprentice was caught between reality and the mirror image, then he would be finished and dismembered by the space energy on the spot. Mordo looked at Li Feng with an idiotic look and said, "What do you think? Of course, I will teach you the skills of using the portal first, at least so that you can use it flexibly in battle." After that, Mordo kicked the heel of his left foot with his right toe, pulled out the baseball bat-shaped magic weapon behind him, walked around Li Feng, and threw the baseball in his hand with a magical glow, saying, "Actual combat is the best teacher. Now I'm attacking, you can only use the portal to teleport the baseball I hit you." The dumbfounded Li Feng stared at the baseball. "I have to pose to open a door now, and you want me to open the door to catch the baseball? You just want to see my handsome face turn into a pig head. Let's make a deal, you give me a baseball glove, and I promise to catch your ball." Mordo would not care what Li Feng thought, and threw the baseball high up, swung the bat in his hand and hit the baseball, letting the baseball fly towards Li Feng like a cannonball. Li Feng, who didn't even hear the word start, subconsciously moved sideways to avoid the baseball. He turned his head to look at Li Feng, who was flying to who knows where, and said with a smile, "Aha, the ball was hit by you, is today's training over early?" Mordo shrugged, waved the bat in his hand to make a hitting motion, and said, "If I were you, I would learn how to use the portal as soon as possible." Li Feng saw the magic light flashing from the bat in Mordo's hand, and suddenly felt something was wrong. When he heard the sound of breaking through the air behind him, he dodged the baseball behind him and glared at Mordo, saying, "Your bat and baseball are a set of magic tools. Can the baseball return to the bat after being hit?" Mordo hit the baseball towards Li Feng's face again, and smiled, "Of course, otherwise how can I help you practice the portal with only one ball?" The baseball was hit and flew in a straight line, which was good news for Li Feng. At least he could easily avoid the baseball even if he couldn't open the door, and his face would not become a pig's head. But Mordo obviously didn't want to see Li Feng's handsome little face, and the strength of swinging the bat was getting stronger and stronger. As for Li Feng, facing the baseball that likes to hit his face faster and faster, let alone posing to open the door, it was good enough to be able to dodge the baseball. Near noon, Li Feng, sweating, dodged the baseball again and let it fly behind him. He quickly turned around and stretched out his left hand to aim at the returning baseball. While his right hand was spinning in circles, his brain was clearly recalling Mordo's face. He was ready to open a door and let the baseball fly directly to Mordo's face. As a senior mage, Mordo understood what Li Feng was going to do when he saw orange-yellow sparks in front of him. Using the vaulter's jumping shoes, Mordo jumped into the air, as if he was stepping on an invisible step. After a few steps, he turned to the side of Li Feng and hit the baseball that passed through the portal to Li Feng, with a slightly raised corner of his mouth, saying, "Now I believe Master Guyi's evaluation of you. The speed of understanding space-related spells is indeed good. At least I didn't wear these boots in vain today." When the baseball flies in a straight line, it is relatively easy for Li Feng to open the portal as long as he calculates the time. However, Mordo wearing the vaulter's jumping shoes can appear at any time at an angle that Li Feng can't expect. You must know that the baseball is attracted by the bat. After Mordo holding the bat changes his body shape, the flight trajectory of the baseball also changes. So the baseball flying in a straight line? It doesn't exist. Li Feng didn't expect that Mordo, who had been batting the ball opposite or behind him, would suddenly appear above his side to bat the ball. In order to prevent the baseball from kissing his handsome face, he could only concentrate his mind and quickly reach out to aim at the baseball. With such a short time and distance, it is still a bit difficult to open the portal to a size that allows people to pass through, but how big is a baseball? Just a fist. Li Feng, who has been practicing for a whole morning, successfully opened a fist-sized portal and teleported the baseball in front of him to the back of Mordo's head. Seeing Mordo smiling and reaching out to grab the baseball attacking him from behind his head, Li Feng secretly breathed a sigh of relief. It's not easy to succeed. If it weren't for the hanging ring that can save mana for using the portal, my mana would have been exhausted if I continued to practice like this. Throwing the baseball, Mordo thought about how long it took him to skillfully use the portal in the past, and was surprised that Li Feng could skillfully open the portal in half a day. He smiled and said, "One success is accidental, so Before he finished speaking, Mordo threw the baseball again and waved the bat in his hand at Li Feng. Fuck! Li Feng dodged the baseball and cast a portal to the baseball behind him, saying, "Brother, hey, I've been busy all morning. Can I have a drink and rest?" Mordo was above Li Feng, moving to the left and then to the right, as if he was going to make Li Feng dizzy, and said, "You call me brother, so of course I have to teach you the advanced use of portals more seriously. Skillfully opening the door is only the first step. What you have to do now is to move the portal after opening it and teleport the high-speed flying baseball away. As for rest, do you want me to arrange a masseur for you to relax your whole body and have a good rest?" Mordo said sarcastically while hitting the baseball away, "Or do you think he will give you time to rest and recover your mana when you face the enemy in the future? Massager? Does Camartage have this service? I want to say give me 2 massage masters. As for the enemy, he won't give me time to rest, but can't I run?" Li Feng had no choice but to reach out and open the portal, while maintaining the stability of the portal, and constantly adjusting the angle of the portal so that it faces the baseball flying towards him. He understood Mordo's attitude towards Ancient One. It was not an exaggeration to say that Mordo would only treat Ancient One's words as an imperial decree. As long as Ancient One personally told him to teach Li Feng well, Mordo would never be perfunctory. He would definitely train Li Feng to death. No, he would train Li Feng to use the skills of portals and mirror space proficiently. So in the next few days, Li Feng did not complain, because he did not even have time to complain. Every day, except for a short break during mealtime, Mordo would drag him out of the room and use baseball to train him to open portals. As for sleeping at night, the physical body was sleeping while the spirit was reading books. It should not be considered a normal rest, right? A few days later, Li Feng felt that except for not being able to make the portal dance, he had played with the portal in various new ways. For example, opening a palm-sized door in front of him to catch a high-speed flying baseball was already a child's play. Mordo was also satisfied with the training during this period. He couldn't be dissatisfied, because when Li Feng faced his last baseball, he directly teleported the baseball over the Atlantic Ocean. Although the baseball would automatically sense the bat and fly back, it would take time to fly back, and Mordo didn't know whether the baseball over the Atlantic Ocean could still sense Camartage's bat. It would be fun if it could sense it. I don't know what kind of impact it would have if S.H.I.E.L.D. detected a baseball with energy light flying straight from the Atlantic Ocean to the Himalayas. However, Mordo didn't care about these. If he checked it, he would check it. Is he afraid of S.H.I.E.L.D.? Just opening a door would be enough for S.H.I.E.L.D. to look for him for a while. Besides, S.H.I.E.L.D.'s satellites really couldn't find him in Camartage. Do you really think that the magic shield covering the sky above Camartage is for nothing? Unless S.H.I.E.L.D.'s satellites are modified to see through the magic circle, S.H.I.E.L.D. doesn't even know where Camartage is, let alone the name of Camartage. End of the video. Like, subscribe and hit the bell icon for more stories.